Made it here safely. It is Wednesday, September 24th, 2025 at close to 9 a.m. And we're going to call to order the Transportation Agency for Monterey County. We are here at Schilling Place and Salinas. We also have a couple alternate locations as well as our Zoom connection. One of our alternate locations is West Alisal Street in the District 1 Supervisor's Office. And I believe that's our only alternate location today. All right. So with that, we're going to go ahead and do a quick roll call and quorum check.
District 1, Supervisor Alejo.
Linda Gonzalez, alternate.
District 2, Supervisor Church.
Present.
District 3, Supervisor Lopez.
Ramos, alternate.
District 4, Supervisor Askew.
Present.
District 5, Supervisor Daniels.
Here.
City of Carmel by the Sea.
Here.
City of Delray Oaks.
Here.
City of Gonzales. City of Greenfield. City of King City. City of Marina. City of Monterey.
Present on Zoom, however, not non-voting, non-notice due to Brown Act. I'll just be in attendance for viewing, but no voting.
Thank you. City of Pacific Grove.
Here.
City of Salinas. City of Sand City.
Here.
City of Seaside.
Here.
City of Soledad. Ambag.
Here.
Caltrans District 5.
Present.
Monterey Bay Air Resource District.
Here.
Monterey Regional Airport District.
Yeah.
Monterey Salinas Transit.
Here.
City of Watsonville. CSUMB.
Present.
Chair, we do have a quorum.
Fantastic, thank you. And we do have a quick announcement from our council regarding quorum and alternates.
Hello, good morning, check. I just wanted to brief everybody while we're here assembled today. At our last meeting, we had what's called a bare quorum, meaning nobody could leave the room without us breaking quorum. So I just wanted to take this opportunity to remind us that we have alternates. So if you can't make it, even if you think you're going to be, leaving halfway through, if you could let the alternate know so that they can step in your place, that would be very helpful. So if you have any questions about that, please reach out to me after the meeting. Thank you.
And I'll just add, the TAMC's quorum requires a minimum of 9 voting members, which includes a minimum of 7 city representatives and 1 county representative. So just because you've got 5 county representatives present, that's not good enough. We need to ensure that our city representatives are present and that at least 7 city representatives are present, whether it's a primary voting member or an alternate voting member. We are able to remote notice if you give notice in advance. So there's so many ways to make this happen, but it is important that we meet quorum. So thank you for helping us continue to have productive meetings. With that, we're gonna do the Pledge of Allegiance, and I'm gonna ask Kendra Howell from Blue Zones to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance as our special guest today. Put you on the spot over there. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Kendra. Next up, we have public comment today, and this is an opportunity for any member of the public to address the board on items that are not on our agenda, but are within the jurisdiction of this board. We do here allow 2 minutes for public comment, and if there's anyone in the room who would like to approach, we welcome you, and we're so glad to have you here at our meeting today. Thank you for joining us.
My name is Peter Salai, and citizen of Salinas. At your last board meeting, you voted on 2 motions that increased the amount awarded to mid-cycle competitive grants. On one that benefited Gonzales and Greenfield, the vote was unanimous. On the other that included an increase for Salinas, 7 of you voted against Salinas. Had Member Sandoval asked for weighted voting, his motion would have passed 474 to 155. I'm not sure what motivated the vote against Salinas. I only received replies from 2 of you. The lack of response indicates the troubling dereliction of duty to act in a transparent and accountable manner. Is TAMC committed to good governance? The rationale to increase funds for the Gonzales and Greenfield projects was the same underlying the request from Salinas. Even the chair agreed. And since your meeting, legal opinion has been rendered. Quote, "It is the opinion of council that each of the motions which were offered August 27th on this item were appropriate in form and in keeping with the RSVP process." Unquote. In other words, you could have voted unanimously to approve the Sandoval motion. In the absence of any legal or procedural concern, we are left with favoritism, politics, or darker explanations as to why changed criteria would be unevenly applied. Salinas was treated unfairly. You should revisit the matter, apply the changed criteria in a fair manner, and grant Salinas the additional $150,000 requested. In the absence of a correction, I advise Member Sandoval to use weighted voting to protect against unfair treatment by this body that shortchanges the citizens of Salinas.
Thank you for your comment. And we'll, yep, got Kendra up next. Thank you. And I'll also just mention, we do also invite written comment, as was mentioned. Written comment also gets added to our public record, and there is an email address listed on the agenda for anyone who isn't able to make public comment during our meetings, but wants to submit written comment to the full board. So that's always welcome as well. But thanks for joining us, Kendra.
Thank you, and good morning, Chair Askew and members of the board and TAMC staff. I'm Kendra Howell with Salinas Valley Health. I'm also the one of the policy leads on Blue Zones Project Monterey County, specifically for built environment, and I'm here with my colleague.
Yes, good morning, everyone. My name is Maribel Roque. I'm the senior organization lead. I work specifically with work sites, and I had the honor of working with TAMC, moving through implementing those best practices at their workplace.
So really, I mean, it's so wonderful to see many of you, because over the last couple of weeks, we've been coming to the various city council meetings and celebrating the individual communities in their Blue Zones project certification completion. And yesterday we were at the Board of Supervisors. So now certification is complete. The entire county of Monterey is certified as a Blue Zone community, as well as 6 cities: Salinas, Monterey, Seaside, Marina, and I'm going to forget, King City and Gonzales. So, but we're really here this morning to celebrate TAMC, the Transportation Agency of Monterey County, as a partner. And so we have a special presentation to award them, Todd and the staff, with the Community Wellbeing Partner Recognition. And this is for demonstrating your outstanding commitment to building a healthier, happier, and more vibrant community while supporting Monterey County and becoming Blue Zone certified community. Since the beginning, when we started this project, actually, it was in 2018 when the original site assessment started. Todd was there, and Debbie Hale previous to him, but the staff has been phenomenal, and we couldn't have completed the work in built environment policy without our partnership with TAMC. I'm certainly not an engineer. I learned so much over these last 6-7 years, and it has been truly a pleasure to work with them. So really, this morning, this is a celebration of Todd Muck and the entire staff at TAMC. Thank you.
Yay. I'm impressed.
So we have.
Kendra, I'm impressed you pulled that off in 2 minutes. And we had offered
I
to
did.
add this as an agendized item for a more lengthy presentation, but
Well, I would just add that, you know, a lot of people are saying, oh my gosh, Blue Zones is complete. Does this mean it goes away? Absolutely not. It now moves into the sustainability phase. And our original sponsors, Salinas Valley Health, Montage Health, and Taylor Farms, of course, funded the project for the entire length of it. And now Salinas Valley Health and Montage Health have committed to providing resources. In fact, Maribel will soon be an employee of Salinas Valley Health. We'll have 5 staff there to continue the work of this effort. So you'll hear more about how sustainability happens. So again, really, it doesn't go away. I am super honored to be able to continue the work at a county level for built environment. So I'll still be able to work with Todd and the team. In fact, one of the things we're working with them on is a regional, county-wide traffic safety campaign, which supports some grants that the Monterey County Health Department got, particularly for those communities that are in the unincorporated areas, but really a county-wide campaign, ideally to have every city join Salinas and Monterey in becoming a Vision Zero community. So we're thrilled to continue that work.
Great,
you.
thank you. And Todd, if you could just maybe comment, I think in response to this, about TAMC's role in blue zones and the commitment that TAMC has to ensure health and safety of all residents.
Thank you. That was exactly what I was going to come up and say. We've been working with the Blue Zones project this whole time they've been operating. We've been on the Built Environment Committee and some other activities. It hasn't been something we've talked a lot about at the board level, but it's something we've been coordinating with all of our efforts with our Safe Route to School program and our Safe Streets program that we're going to be continuing over the next year. So there's been a lot of good coordination with the Blue Zones where we've been able to leverage all of our efforts to increase outreach to the community. So really appreciate the recognition and the partnership. Thank you.
Oh, it's fantastic. Thank you.
Yeah.
Here, let's.
All right, and I think there's some journey books to share too, so those will be left for anyone. And you're making the rounds to other cities as well who are interested in presentations and additional information. So, and if anyone doesn't have Kendra's contact information, I know she's happy to share that for additional information and how your city can continue to engage in health and wellness for your residents. There's some pretty incredible outcomes that have been achieved through this engagement process. So thank you again. Thanks for joining us. All right, with that, is there any additional public comment today? Is there anyone else in chambers for public comment? Nope. Is there anyone online for public comment? And I'm going to need some help identifying names because I don't know how to use this. There is. Dwight, we have you on for public comment next.
Okay, can
Thank
you hear
for
me
joining
okay?
us. Dwight, you're up.
You can hear me okay?
We can, yes, thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. Good morning. What is really going on between Caltrans and TAMC staff regarding the installation of AI adaptive signal controls on Highway 68? Last month, Caltrans reported that they were in the procurement process and that the unfinished co-op agreement was separate and not holding up the purchase of the equipment, and that installation would be completed before the end of the year. Well, now we are a month later and a purchase order has still not been generated, and there are suggestions of problems that will hold up the process even further. What exactly is the holdup? The board and the public need to know the details now. Statements from TAMC staff and Caltrans are vague, not transparent, and do not detail the real reasons for the delay. Remember, it was reported last year that Caltrans headquarters had approved the AI adaptive pilot study for 4 intersections, but did not have the funds available to do the installation. So TAMC voted to supply the funds and added additional money to do all 9 intersections. Caltrans then came back with additional costs that they said were necessary to do the installation. The TAMC board voted in March to supply additional funds to cover those costs as well, and a September installation date was announced by Caltrans at the board meeting. Now we are at the end of September, and the vendor has still not received a purchase order. I sent the board a letter on Monday regarding this, including an email from Caltrans from July 2024 with their commitment for implementation of adaptive. So here we are over a year later, and Caltrans has still not purchased the equipment for the installation or even listed adaptive on their project update list for Monterey County. The board and the public deserve better and need a truthful and detailed explanation for the delay from both Todd and Scott today. Thank you.
Thank you, Dwight. Thank you for your comments and thank you for tracking this project so closely. Do we have response at this time or do we?
We will have
Will
it
we have it later? Okay, well, with our Caltrans agency's report. Is there any other public comment at this time? Anyone else online? Wait, and I cannot see the list, so if, no, okay, I'm being told no additional public comment online. All right, with that, we're going to close public comment. We're going to move on to our consent agenda, and we'll just have the record note that we now have Supervisor Alejo and Councilmember Ortiz. Thank you. That you arrived, just having the record note. Yeah, thank you. Okay, next up, we have our consent agenda, which includes items 3.11 through 3.72. Is there any item to be pulled or discussed on consent? We'll go to Director Velasquez.
I just want to comment on item 6.
And if we could use a microphone for the audience. Thank you for the recording.
Can you hear me?
Just for the recording.
Yes, so I just want to make a comment on the minutes on item 6 in the minutes. And then also a correction to my last name.
Sorry, so that was
3.1.1, it's in the minutes.
3.11.
Yes.
Got it. 3.11, so that was a comment and a correction to your last name.
Correct.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Supervisor or Director
just a
Alejo.
clarification for Todd Muck on our state legislative contract with Corey Consulting on item 3.1.4. If you could just clarify, the kind of title is a little misleading because it says adding 168,000 for total contract of 456,000. But could you just let everybody know on a monthly basis, we increased the contract from, I think, 6,000 to 7,000, and that's what we're paying monthly, correct? So I think yearly it's like 84,000.
I'm sorry, that is correct. We're increasing the rate for the contract from 6,000 to 7,000 a month. If we're adding additional 2 years to his
Right.
existing contract.
Okay, just like the bigger numbers just kind of make it seem like it's more expensive, but it's really
It just reflects the total
total,
contract.
since we contracted him several years ago.
Correct.
Thank you very much.
And to be clear, the staff report portion outlines the detail. It's just not listed in the
Summary,
agenda summary.
correct,
Okay, so the information in the staff report is fully correct?
correct.
Okay, on that. So thank you for that comment. Is there any other item to be pulled for comment? Question? Okay, so let's go to Director Velasquez.
So sorry, I had a comment on 3.1.4 as well.
Oh, okay, let's do let's do both of yours. Yeah, thank you. We'll do 3.1.1 and 3.1.4 for comment.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. My comment first, I just want to make sure my name is correct on the minutes. I know in some it is it's spelled with an S, and others it's actually with the Z, 2 Zs on it. So if we can correct that. But my comment is in relation to item 6, and I know we heard a public comment on that, but I didn't stay here for the remainder of that conversation, but I wish I would have. I think for me, the board, one of the concerns that took place is the board took action on additional RSTP funding, which is a one-time funds, and also from the reserve account that I didn't see when I went back to review the outline and criteria of the one-time funding distribution, and also if it was based on several criteria. I didn't see that. I heard when I went back to look at the meeting minutes that there was an equity cited as part of the discussion. And so for me, if we're gonna cite equity as part of the discussion, I think it has to also be, I take that extremely serious when people are talking about equity issues, especially given where I come from South County. So if the board's gonna approve the use of reserve funds based on equity, yet there is no equity-based criteria that's explicitly included in the 2023 guidelines and the policies, I think we need to come back, look at the policies, and if an equity component is to be a factor in the funding decisions that this board makes, then it needs to be incorporated into those policies to ensure that there's fairness and consistency in the way that we're going to distribute the funds. So I think it's important to be able to bring back the policy review, how future funds and use of reserve funds are going to be distributed. So that way we don't pit one city against another. That's my comment on item 3.1.16.
Thank you. So it's not necessarily a correction to the minutes, it's a comment on the discussion that occurred at that meeting. Okay. And I think there was, I'll just also add to that comment. I think the policy, there has been quite a bit of discussion about the policy prior to and since that meeting, and the allocation of those additional funds. And so we've asked Todd to bring that policy back to the board. And if you can maybe speak to that.
Yes, the distribution of regional surface transportation program funds, we go through cycles where we program every few years. And each time we do it, the board has an opportunity. We bring the policies to the board for review and discussion. We also bring it to the Technical Advisory Committee and the Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee for review. We are scheduled to update. The next regular cycle is this spring, so it should be back to the board in March for discussion and review.
Yeah. Great. So stay tuned for a March discussion about the RTP policies. All right. Any other items from the board's perspective to
Sure.
pull
Sorry.
comment? Oh,
Interrupt.
yes.
I had
Oh, and sorry.
3.1.4.
Yes, of course. Thank you, Director. Yes, 3.1.4.
Thank you. And on that specific contract, I know I'm going to support the proposed extension today as it's 2 years. And and reading the report, it seems like we've contracted with I want to say Curry Consulting for legislative work already in progress. However, I just want to say that for me, I'm not comfortable with the use of sole source option for this contract because it states that the work is in progress, and that's how we're defining sole source. So for me, it's not sufficient to qualify under the California Public Contract Code under the sole source definition, because it's pretty specific in terms of when we use that. So I would recommend, and this is just my recommendation, that after if this is approved, then after the 2-year in 2027, that the board consider going out for an RFQ to ensure that we have a transparent process. Just my comment.
Thank you. Okay, and yep. Any other board comments on the consent? Okay, let's open it up to the public. Any public comment on our consent agenda? Oh, okay, and I can't see those. Are you able to?
There's a 2004 number.
Okay, we'll go to phone number 2004 for public comment. Thank you for joining us, and you have 2 minutes to comment. Thank you.
Yes, hello, TAMC board members. I'm a little confused. Is this concerning the SURF project?
This is public
Funding?
comment on our consent agenda, and do we have anything on SURF on our specific, which item would you be commenting on?
I think it's 311. I'm not quite sure.
3322.
I don't have the agenda in front of me.
3322. Okay, if you'd like to comment on
3.2.2.
3.2.2. Yep, you may comment on 3.2.2 on the consent. Please proceed.
This board has misused our money with this SURF project. And I've commented on this in the past. And it breaks my heart that there's people like you that are making these decisions in this crucial time of global warming when we need the train. And instead, your project is going to cover up the train tracks and bring in this futile, short-term fix with covering up the tracks for a bus that very, very few people are going to use. And the train could have brought in thousands and thousands of people for daily trips. And that's what you should have used this money for. And it hasn't been used that way. And I'm hoping that you will change your tune. And as we become more and more frightened of climate change, I think maybe you might think better to use the money in a more wise circumstance. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Is there any other public comment for our consent agenda today? 2837, you're up next. Thank you. 2837. For
Hello,
public
TAMC
comment.
members.
Thank you.
Yes, hi. This is Brian Rosen here. You're a very powerful group of politicians, supervisors, city council people, et cetera, and you can get a lot done if you want to, a lot of good things done, because you have incredible power and unity. On the SURF project, you have incredible unity. Marin County, that's not that different in population from Monterey County. Boy, they got a beautiful little rail system going all the way up to Sonoma County, and then that extends up to Santa Rosa Airport, and it's going to extend even more. So the people voted for Prop 116, and I think a lot of people feel stabbed in the back. They get BS and gaslight by you when they speak up or they talk to your staff members. This is not what the public wants. Once a rail is paved over, it's very unlikely that it's going to become a busway after all the investment and all the energy put into Surf busway. This is when rail is paved over, it hardly ever comes back. I mean, I don't know of any case it does. And this is not what the public wants. And you've been ramming this down our throats, misleading the public for years about how the railroad tracks wouldn't be impacted and all of that. Todd said that one form of transportation would not be sacrificed for another, and that wasn't his goal. And you can just look at all the statements online about that were made, and suddenly a whole new project with no public comment, and people were misled the first time completely about the rail track staying in place. This has been a bad thing. So we have it bad enough with Trump. Now you're a bunch of gaslighters and misleaders, and it just puts the public in a pretty bad situation of mistrust to all of you. And we voted for Prop 116. We didn't vote to take out the railroad tracks and put in a busway that only bypasses about 4 miles of traffic that nobody's hardly going to use. So you can open up the area to development.
All right, thank you for your comments. We are out of time. Any other public comment with us today on our consent agenda? I'm not seeing any other hands raised. So with that, no, we're good? Okay, thank you. With that, we'll entertain a motion with the corrections to item 3.1.1 that were noted regarding Director Velasquez's last name. We have a motion from Alejo, a second from Oglesby. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, motion passes. Thank you. Moving on to our first scheduled item. We have a presentation on the California Road Charge Program. And
good morning. I'm just going to introduce our speaker today.
oh, okay, great.
So
I don't
my name is
recognize Lauren's name. Is that not on TAMC? Right. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
My name is Yannicka Strauss. I'm an Associate Transportation Planner at TAMC. And today you'll hear a presentation on the California Road User Charge Program. This board heard a presentation in June about various funding mechanisms that could replace the gas tax program. And the California Road Charge Program is another option. So we have Lauren Prahota from the California Road Charge Program to give us more information about that. Thanks.
Good morning. Pleasure to be here with you all on a slightly damp morning. Again, my name is Lauren Prahota, and I work for Caltrans. We have been doing some research as we explore potential solutions to an issue that affects all of us across the state. You guys, I know, are trying to see how this works here. Nope. Oh. There we go. As you all are aware, our transportation funding in the state primarily comes from the gas tax. So that's public works funding, it's state highway funding, it's transit funding. And we've relied on that for over 100 years now. But as we look to the future, that's breaking down. And it's important to think about the ways the gas tax is starting to crumble as we think about solutions. So I like to start off with talking about these 4 issues that we're seeing. First off is greater fuel efficiency in gas-powered vehicles. You get farther on a gallon of gas, and that's fantastic in so many ways, but that does mean that people are paying less in gas taxes. Then, of course, we have vehicles that are not using traditional fuels at all, and so they aren't paying anything in gas taxes, though we do have a registration fee in place. We have inflation issues. Now, at the state level, in SB1, we did index the gas tax to inflation, but the federal gas tax has not been increased since the early 90s, so we're seeing those purchase power issues. And as those 3 issues grow, what we're seeing is a greater and more expanding uneven fuel tax burden, where some people are paying much more to use the road than others, depending on the vehicle that they drive. So, wrong way. There we go. So starting back in 2014, the state legislature directed the California State Transportation Agency and Caltrans to study an idea of something called a road charge, which is a per mile fee, switching away from paying a per gallon fee that the gas tax is right now to paying per mile, so it doesn't matter what type of vehicle you're driving. So the state is studying this as a potential replacement for the gas tax, looking at 1 per mile rate for all passenger vehicles. When we get into the commercial vehicle space, it could look a tad different. Just studying it as being a revenue neutral, trying to stable our existing funding, not necessarily looking at a tax increase, but trying to stop the bleeding of where we are right now. Not trying to change behavior, again, focusing on as a revenue source, and not necessarily studying how the money is spent. We're just looking at that mechanism change. That's what our research program is focused on. Now, each of these things are policy decisions. The legislature could take a different approach to them, but that's how we've structured our research so that we could kind of zone in on understanding the effect of that change in collection method. Still wrong direction. So want to give you kind of some examples of when I talk about that inequity, that uneven fuel tax burden, of what that's looking like. So these are some examples of some typical vehicles we have in California, what they pay right now in any given month to drive the same number of miles. And you can see that there's quite the difference. And what our research has shown, that these folks over here who are driving low efficiency vehicles, they tend to be in disadvantaged communities and in rural communities mostly. So you have this spread in different areas of the state, in different communities where people are not paying the same and don't have the same tax burden. But with a road charge, that comes into balance. So what that means is some people would pay more. Those who have very fuel efficient vehicles, who are not necessarily contributing the same amount to roadway maintenance right now, would see some increase. And then on the other side, we see folks, having their tax contribution come down. So it comes into that everyone's paying the same to use the road, to use the same number of miles. So this is not just a California issue. This is a national issue. Many states also rely on the gas tax. The federal government has a gas tax, and a lot of people are looking at road use charges as a potential replacement. There are a number of states that have existing programs. The Oregon State Legislature, possibly as soon as next week, will be voting to take their voluntary program to a mandatory program. We'll see if that happens. We're watching that closely. The state of Hawaii, just this July, launched their mandatory program, starting with the first phase of electric vehicles. You have a lot of different states that have done pilots. And then the federal government, as part of the bipartisan infrastructure law, did have a federal pilot that was planned, and USDOT is tasked with doing that. So there's a lot of discussion nationwide about this idea, and a lot of states looking at this. And you'll notice both red and blue states, there's a lot of consensus I find when I talk to elected officials about transportation needing to be a user-based fee. And they like to be in that space. And so there's a lot of appeal for a lot of folks in investigating this idea of a road use charge, because it's very user-based. So what has California done? We've done a number of pilots to kind of tease this out. The first one, the legislature directed us to do, that was back in 2017. And really was kind of that general feasibility test of, is this something that we think could work for California? We had 5,000 people statewide participate, using a lot of different ways to report your miles and figure things out. The response was very positive. And the general response that came back is, yeah, this could work for California. But it did have a couple of areas that future study was recommended to understand some things a little bit better. So that's what we've kind of been doing since then, teasing those areas of research out, because we want to make sure we take the time to be thoughtful and thorough in understanding the potential impacts of such a switch. This is potentially a big change to our tax structure. We want to make sure that we understand how it impacts such a large and diverse state as California. So in our second project, we looked at how can we make the user experience as easy as possible, pairing the collection of road charge with different technologies and business models, such as usage-based insurance or paying at the pump or ride sharing. How could we put that in to make sure it's not an extra thing that taxpayers have to do? Our public-private roads project, we completed, the report actually just came out at the beginning of this year. This one was really focused on engaging rural and tribal communities in a discussion about what this looked like in their day, wanting to get their voice to the table as we were studying this and see what their unique concerns might be. So that was the key focus of that. We also tested some GPS technology options, some of those high-tech reporting options that the state could potentially use, see how that went. And also partnered with one of our tolling agencies in the state to see how we could cross over administrative structures and potentially find some cost savings and efficiencies there. And then lastly, in 2021, the state legislature asked us to look again and actually collect actual revenue from some participants in our most recent pilot, which we actually ended the live stage this January. So we're in the process right now of analyzing those results and reporting writing the report, which should be out next year. So that's kind of the main body of work. We've also done a lot of supportive research that looks at specific impacts to different groups, such as supercommuters, rural drivers, disadvantaged communities. We want to understand how the tax burden might shift, and we want to make sure that it meets with our priorities and how different key groups of concern are treated. So how might it work? The system we envision that's been tested in a couple of different states is the idea of having a state agency, likely the DMV, oversee some third-party commercial account managers that would manage the processing of the tax and reporting of the tax. So if you think of, if you go through tax season, you have a service, say something like H&R Block, that helps you determine what your tax is and helps you pay that. It's that same kind of idea of handling that. And they would provide the collection method and the billing and the collection and off to the state, and they'd be overseen and audited by the Department of Motor Vehicles. We envision a system that would have a range of ways that you could report your miles. And this really comes down to the issue of privacy. In our society, we are constantly making these decisions and trade-offs between efficiency and privacy and how we manage our data. And we want to make sure that in this system, people can make choices that make sense for themselves. So if you're someone who really, really values privacy, that is great. You know, all you need to report are the number of miles that you did in the year. That no location is necessary, nothing like that. So we have very low tech reporting options, such as, you know, just driving in and have something read your odometer, photos taken, things like that. On the other hand, some people love their data. They love knowing everything about where they've driven. They like the efficiency and the preciseness of having that location, showing where they have been. That's great too. You know, that's their choice. So we have that range from low tech to high tech so people can make the best choice for themselves, use their data and protect their data in the way that they want to. So that's kind of where we are in the research sense on this idea. The legislature is starting to have some discussions about the funding situation in our state. First off, they've had a series of informational hearings, the Assembly Transportation Committee this year. They'll be having a third one on October 20th. So far, they've talked through the funding issue itself and what the projections are for revenue in the state. They've looked at what other states are doing on this issue to respond to the kind of cratering of the gas tax. And so the third one, I think, will be focused on what are the specific options that California can really consider. In addition, Chair Wilson of the Assembly Transportation Committee, she's having a series of town halls around the state to talk about the funding issue and engage the public in the discussion of we need to do something around our transportation funding. Those are still kind of being developed. You can see I don't have all the precise details on here, but they should be streamed as well, so you can watch them remotely if you're not in this precise location. If you are interested in those, I would monitor the Assembly Transportation Committee website or contact their staff as they're finalizing the details so you can get that precise information. So all of our research is up online at caroadcharge.com. You can see all of our project reports. There are links to other states and what they're doing. There's some informational videos. We have a website or a calculator on the website that you can put in your own vehicle and the number of miles that you drive, and you can get an estimate of what you pay under the gas tax and what you might pay under a road charge so that you can understand exactly what it means for your budget. Or the budget of your friend or different communities and things like that. So wealth of information there, and then my contact information as well. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for the presentation. And this is something that we've sort of been talking about here at TAMC and thinking about. And given that Monterey County is a rural county with, pockets of population, but really so many of our residents do travel pretty significant distances. It is an issue that is significant for us. And we wanted to make sure that our board really understands what's at stake and what the risks and benefits to our residents are so that we can engage in a meaningful way in this conversation. And so thank you so much for being here. I do believe that our board will have some questions for you. So to that point, I think we'll start over here and we'll start with Supervisor Alejo, and then we'll try to do some sort of organized fashion to give everyone a chance to comment before we make second rounds of comments, questions.
Great. Thank you for your presentation. Certainly one of the greatest challenges coming up for the state of California. Could you just distinguish or explain how would the charge work? If you're not going to, in the future, if you're not going to charge a gas tax at the pump, where will your consumer see the bill? Would it be on the DMV bill, an annual charge? Just if you could just explain how that would work in practical terms.
Right. So the DMV would contract with a number of what we call third-party account managers. That could be something like a usage-based insurance company. It could be Jiffy Lube. It could be any business that has an account management function that offers a way to collect your miles. So you'd sign up probably through a website that the DMV would direct you to. And you'd choose how you would want to report your miles, whether you want that low-tech option of just going in and checking it once a year, or if you want to break it into monthly payments, because that's better for your budget, and have a reporting device that does that. You would have that choice, and then you would connect with the account manager, and they would set you up in that reporting so that they would collect the miles, and whether you chose to be billed monthly, quarterly, annually, they would send you that invoice and they'd facilitate your payment to the state. They'd be connected on the back end to the DMV system. The tax record is tied to the VIN number of the vehicle. So that's why it's key that the DMV is involved, because they are the record keeper of vehicles in the state. So does that make sense?
Yes, and just as a follow-up, do you envision in this process that you're speaking at different communities, do you envision California doing what the other state, I think it was Washington, Oregon, that you mentioned, would start it on a volunteer basis and then eventually take the next step of making a mandatory program? But I know this is a concern that my colleague Supervisor Lopez was here. Is this the same as the vehicle miles traveled discussion, what's the road charge versus the vehicle miles traveled? And that has always been a concern, especially in the rural areas and for disadvantaged communities, obviously, because those workers have to travel longer distances. And in terms of equity, the vehicle's miles travel discussion always seemed that it would put the burden on those who could least afford it. We see it here locally where families now move to Los Baños, they're commuting here, or to Silicon Valley. Within our county, if they live in the Salinas Valley, they're commuting to the peninsula and back, where other professions and other workers are able to work closer to home or at home. If you could just explain the difference between those two and then about the pilot program, the volunteer program.
Absolutely. So first off, you've touched on a great point of confusion, which is terminology. On the West Coast, we tend to talk in terms of road use charge. The East Coast, they call it a mileage-based user fee. Minnesota, it's a distance-based fee. Then we also have the VMT fee discussion in California. VMT fee, that in California specifically, is really related more to SB 375 and housing. So it's a very different thing actually from what we're talking about in terms of transportation funding. It's easy to get them crossover because of the terminology, but one's more in the housing arena, road charge is in the transportation space. In terms of those who have to drive far, we know that this is a huge point of concern. That's why we've really looked into it in detail and studied the impact on rural drivers, super commuters, things like that. Really what it comes down to is the car that someone's driving and the fuel efficiency of that car. Because if you're driving 100 miles right now under the gas tax system, you're still going to drive 100 miles under a road charge system, right? That number of miles is not going to change. So rural drivers, they're still going to have that distance. What changes is the per mile rate. So if you're right now under the gas tax, if you're driving a low fuel efficiency car, so if you have a pickup truck for your farm activities, or you're a construction worker who has to go to a lot of different sites and move tools, you're paying more right now under the gas tax system. So you have the opportunity probably to save under a road charge system. And again, this is where the value of that calculator on our website comes in. You can put in those specific vehicles and see what the different charges might be. But if you have a more fuel efficient vehicle, if you have an EV or very hybrid, things like that, you will pay more under the road charge. Because right now it's that slide that you're out of balance, right? The road charge comes in to bring it equal at a per mile rate. So when we looked at the impact to super commuters, what we found is there's kind of tale of two super commuters. On one hand, we have folks who tend to be more in management professions, commuting in, more on the Caucasian and white Asian side of things, and they tend to have more fuel efficient vehicles. On the other hand, we have folks in the construction and more service fields who may be more in the Latino space wise, and they have these lower fuel efficient vehicles. So this group will likely pay less under road charge. This group would likely pay more. Rural drivers, on average, tend to have those low fuel efficiency vehicles. So again, there's the potential for them to pay less per mile under a road use charge system. But at the individual level, it comes down to the car that you drive.
Cancer, or do we envision the legislature implementing a volunteer program first before considering it mandatory?
I try never to guess what the legislature will do. It's certainly a path. I think it's more difficult for California to start just because we have that 2/3 vote threshold. So for example, the state of Utah, which does have an active program, they only have a 50% vote threshold. So they've already in the last 4 years changed their program. Almost every year they run a different bill and tweak it a little bit. We don't necessarily have the flexibility to do that in California just because of that 2/3 vote structure. So my guess is we kind of have one shot at building the system and gathering the votes, just because it's tough to vote on taxes, right? So my guess is that we wouldn't have space for that, but ultimately the legislature will do what they feel is the right path.
Just last commentary. It's definitely not an easy issue. It could be very politically charged. It's one thing when you pay, and the gas tax, small amounts each time you go to the pump versus getting a big bill at the end of the year, right? In 2002, or just after 2002, just when they put a fee, a DMV fee, Governor Gray Davis got recalled on that, and he was hit by later subsequent Governor Schwarzenegger, just on that fee. The DMV was a basis for a recall. So for any legislature, for any governor in the future, it's going to be a hard one, I think, trying to take this to the voters and them to be comfortable with it. Thank you.
It's okay.
Thank you. Supervisor Alejo asked a couple of my questions, so I just want to get clarification on one final point. So if it's not vehicle miles traveled, it's a formula that takes into account both the fuel efficiency of the vehicle and vehicle miles traveled, and it's both of those that are factored in to determine what your annual fee is?
No, it's a per mile. So for example, in our last pilot, the rate was set at 2.8 cents per mile. So it's 2.8 cents times 100 miles. That would be it. Now you could, the legislature did have us have two rate structures in this last pilot. One that was that flat rate. The other was actually an individual rate that was based on the MPG of your vehicle. The thing about road charges, it has the potential to go in a lot of different ways. The rate structure could be based on a lot of different things. We don't have that ability with the gas tax. So you could base it on income, you could base it on type of vehicle, weight, fuel efficiency, all those things. Now, the more complex the rate structure gets, the more the administrative cost goes up, the harder it is to explain to the public. And you're bringing in some other policy goals other than just revenue, and you can get a little bit mushy there. But there's a potential to do a lot of different things.
Okay, so when you're presenting to us today, you're not presenting one formula, saying that hasn't been determined yet?
No, the rates have not been, that would be something definitely for the
Not the
legislature.
rates, but the formula. Because if it's not vehicle miles traveled, though you're reporting your mileage at the end of the year, what I'm understanding is the way in which there's some equity there is by accounting for the type of vehicle and its fuel efficiency, as well as vehicle miles traveled. But if I'm getting this wrong, please let me know.
You have the option to do it either way. So in our last pilot, the legislature had us look at both. So one with just that flat rate, where it's just the number of miles times 2.8 cents. So that, in that scenario, it doesn't matter what kind of car you drive, right? On the other rate that they had us look at, it's specifically based on the MPG of the vehicle. So it's a specific calculation for your vehicle times the number of miles.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. So the original calculation would still have all the concerns that Supervisor Alejo brought up in terms of distance between your house and your work, how rural you live in, the rural nature of your community, the fact that someone might have a really long driveway, like all of these things.
There's going to be a mileage factor in any calculation. Yeah. Yeah. So those kind of discussions relate to any sort of rate structure, because the mileage is always the key driving factor of, because it's a per mile fee. It's charging for you for how much you've used the road.
My last question then is for staff. I feel like we had a big presentation from our consultant who had another avenue, and we just approved his extension of his contract. Is that something that's even being considered anymore?
So the extension of our legislative advocates contract was separate from this discussion. And our Gus Curry presented on a vehicle registration fee a few months ago. And we wanted to share that and thank Lauren for presenting today to just show the board kind of the range of things that we can be talking about that the legislature could be discussing hopefully this next year. And so that will still be as part of the discussion. And next month, the board will be talking about its legislative platform, and we could talk more about options there.
Yeah, I don't want to give the impression that anything has been decided. This is a summary of our research that the legislature asked us to look into, because I think road use charge is probably the newest idea. And so the legislature wanted some help in understanding the impacts of it. But definitely registration fees are an option. There are others. I think that October 20th hearing that I mentioned will be kind of talking through some of that range of options that the legislature can consider.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and we'll continue on. And I think just for context, and from where I sit, the reality is we have a declining revenue source. We need to find an alternative. The legislature's been going down one path. The consultant or the lobbyist who we've hired is working with the coalition and looking at a different set of options. That if you could go back a couple slides, to the one where it showed everyone paying $25, I think, across the board. And so we had a presentation from Gus a couple of months ago about the vehicle registration fee as his proposed solution with the coalition that he's working with. This is a different set of solutions that are being available. And the question that's going to ultimately come back to this board is, what position do we want to take? Do we want to give direction to Gus to take a position for Monterey County to support one of these set of paths moving forward? And what we need to understand what the options are so that we can best advocate for what's best for our residents. And maybe it would have been helpful to have the reminder of the VRF proposal that Gus had in front of us today as well. But this idea that, you know, whatever kind of car you have, I think that's helpful. But when we talk about equity in Monterey County, equal doesn't always mean, you know, equity doesn't mean equal, right? Equity means, you know, everyone shows up with something different, and it's ensuring that people have what they need. And so the conversation is fundamentally different when we're in this room. And when we have folks who are required to drive such far distances with low efficiency cars. And then we have others who have high efficiency cars who don't have to drive far because they live and work in the same place. Your equation is just so skewed in such a skewed difference from the get-go that we have to talk about a very different set of, like, our advocacy so often comes from a very different place.
Right.
So I think as a TAMC board, as we engage in this, we want to make sure we have all the information so that when we take a position, we're fully informed. So having just provided that context, again, as a reminder, I've spent a lot of time talking with Todd about this, so we'll go maybe this direction now too.
And if I can, I think that those are excellent points, and there are degrees of equity sometimes, right? I think what we can show is that road charge would bring in greater equity than the current gas tax system. That doesn't mean that there aren't other structures that could bring even more, right? So again, this is what we're trying to do, is get information out for exactly as you say, so you guys can be thinking this through and you can engage in discussions of how you want to engage your state representatives on what's best for your communities.
I'm going to agree with my fellow supervisors. Turn that on. Thank you. I'm going to agree with my fellow supervisors' hesitations and questions on some of this. I think a couple of them raised concerns about the billing structure here too. And I think you're going to really face a real problem with public perception, because now there's a new bill going out and it's going to look like a new tax. And people aren't going to relate that, oh, you're not paying a gas tax, you're paying this. So there's going to be a lot of opposition. I can see problems with that, which I'll kind of get to. But I have a question, and then I want to kind of go into this equity issue, because I do have some real disagreements with with what's been presented. Right now, how much is an average person pay a year on gas tax?
The average Californian pays about $300 a year in state gas taxes. The exemption, well, the other factor there to consider is EVs have a $118 additional registration fee. So there's about a $200-ish gap there.
Okay. I'm sorry, it's 300 you're paying 118 right now, or average, as you say, on registration? I'm not
Um,
understanding the $200 gap if the 300 is in,
So if
gas
you're an
tax.
electric vehicle owner, you're paying a $118 additional registration
I
fee.
got you. Okay.
Gas powered vehicles,
that.
$300.
So that's for electric vehicles.
Mhm.
Yeah. This chart up here, well, that isn't the chart we had there a minute ago, but
Sorry.
anyway. And the mileage that's drawn on there, is this like average mileage or is it
Average.
city or, okay?
It's average, yeah. So rural drivers obviously would drive a bit more.
All right. So yeah, and I disagree that, I mean, I'm open-minded if you can prove it to me here. But you're talking about how this is going to be more equitable for rural drivers, because on the mileage they're driving as opposed to the urban, because they might be having less fuel efficient vehicles. But the fact is, if I live out in the rural area, if I drive 20 minutes in a rural area, I'm going to cover 15 or 20 miles. If somebody's more urban, area drives 20 minutes, such as Director Sandoval drives from North Salinas to South Salinas, he's only going to be covering a few miles. So I'm paying a lot more on that, for my, because I'm covering more mileage in the same amount of time my vehicle's running than, for example, he is. And, and yet we're having our vehicles, assuming they're even electric vehicles, are running the same number of times. So one, there's a problem with this is it's not doing anything for energy conservation. And I think that's important, whether you're using carbon-based or you're using renewables. I mean, energy is cost money. It's something that we have difficulty producing. So I'm not seeing an equity right there. I'm seeing actually, when I look at this, I have the impression that rural drivers are going to actually probably be paying more. I mean, you mentioned this was revenue neutral, but it's revenue neutral in the total dollars. There's going to be winners and there's going to be losers individually. And I think the winners are going to be the urban drivers and the losers are going to be the rural drivers. And if you've got something to dispute that would be fine. But that's the first thing that really sticks out to me on this. Going back to, well, which is one reason why I think one of the options on here should be, would be to measure time instead of mileage. And I don't know if I saw something up there about time earlier in one of the options. I don't know if that's being discussed or not. The couple of other points here is right now, if you register your vehicle or don't register your vehicle, and I don't know how many out of all the cars in this state, I don't know how many vehicles are not registered, but I assume there's probably quite a few. But anybody who has unregistered vehicles is paying a gas tax. And if they're unregistered, they're not going to be paying any tax at all on this. One of my other questions here before my last point is, so somebody's getting a bill and they don't pay. What is being discussed as the enforcement mechanism for that?
Sure. Those are all excellent questions, and we have looked into them because, the presentation I gave you obviously is a very high level, but we have definitely spent our time going deep. So first off, I want to just note on the rural drivers. So what we spent a lot of time looking at the impact to rural drivers, both in research, but also in a specific pilot, engaging them in discussions specifically, because I think, data-driven work is one thing, but also those conversations are also important. They're two different key pieces of the puzzle. What our research shows is that the vehicles that rural drivers on average drive are these low efficiency vehicles. So they're paying $30 in a month to drive 1,000 miles compared to other folks who own different cars, right? So that's why we say in the shift to a road charge, there's a potential for some tax savings because they come down. That doesn't change the number of miles that they drive. The tax structure is not going to be able to affect the distance that rural drivers have to drive. That's there, and that's something that we can't necessarily affect through this kind of tax policy. But what we can do is bring that per mile rate down. So again, it's the kind of that degree of equity things. Is it a 100% solution? No, but it is going in a positive direction, if that makes sense.
I still don't see it. I don't, nothing's been presented here to show me that, you're driving 20 miles in 20 minutes as opposed to 3 miles in 20 minutes in the city. And even though you're having a less efficient vehicle, assuming that it's on the case for the greater distance you're traveling, I'm not, you haven't presented the numbers to show me what is being saved out there. And I'm sure you probably didn't, come with a chart for that and
Well,
everything. But
I
that's-
wish I could pull up the website because again, that's the point of the calculator. I could put your car in and the number of miles that you drive, and we could pull up those numbers of what you pay under the gas tax and what you might pay under a road charge. That gives you those exact numbers.
Okay.
So that might be a helpful tool.
Okay, that'd be great. And then
Yeah.
the final thing is, and this is just a suggestion as an approach, and I'm not understand why we're, going all this way when, the reason we're looking at doing this is one, because cars are becoming more fuel efficient and because we're going to electric vehicles. And electric vehicles are going to completely wipe it on out. Why not just require electric vehicles that there be a device applied when they get charged so that they're paying a tax right then for the electricity that goes into the electric vehicle? Why not have a special kind of meter on those electric chargers?
So that is an excellent point, and it's kind of another type of fuel-based tax, and that's something that has been looked into a little bit. Part of the issue right now with that, implementing that, is really a technology issue in that most people
Just
charge
to
at
keep our
home.
meeting moving, we're sort of trying to stay on sort of our broad policy conversation so that we're able to give policy. So we
Okay.
many details we could get into, but
I
we
get
want
it.
to
I
be
mean,
able to
this
give
is part of the
some-
policy that, we're in
Mhm,
terms of
yeah.
discussing as an options. And if we wanted us to take a position on whether to support this or not, but that's fine.
But I do think, for some of for some of the more specific detailed questions, because I do need to get everyone out of here by noon. I guess, but we've got a lot of people. So Lauren did leave her contact information. Todd's also available. And I just want to make sure that we get to everyone's questions.
Yeah, I'd be happy to have a follow-up conversation with you and go through all the
Sorry.
weeds.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and be clear, I'm not here to advocate for road charge. This is the research the state has done. There are other options, and I think what you're doing is exactly what you need to do in deciding where you guys want to be and what you want to advocate for.
And not to say they're all really good questions. So let's continue down to LeVar.
Thank you, and I did appreciate the presentation and especially clarifying road charge versus VMT. Touching back on the enforcement mechanism. So right now, I pay my gas, I walk away, there's no government agency looking over my back. My only enforcement is if I don't pay my registration. So what is, in your research, did you provide recommendations?
Yeah, so we submitted a report as required to the legislature last year, and again, it is on our website, detailing the outline of a potential administrative program on how this would work. And one aspect of that is the enforcement process. And what we envision is building into the existing registration enforcement process, similar to if you get a bill from Fast Track or one of our, tolling agencies. If you do not pay it after a certain point, it goes over to the DMV and gets rolled into your registration enforcement. So wherever we could, we've tried to pair road charge into existing state processes, one, to keep the administrative costs down, but also to make sure it makes sense to the public in as much as they're already doing things, to make it as easy as possible, because it is potentially a big, like I said, transition in our tax structure.
And then just one point to staff, the number 3 link is a broken link, so we weren't able to access that one in the staff report. Secondly, while I see how you have it pared down, so for someone like me, older vehicle doesn't already have GPS on it, privacy issues, don't want to do that, but I'm also off-road for a lot of ag stuff.
Mhm.
Did you look at having the ability to have a X amount per month waiver for those that didn't want to go to the GPS monitoring unit
Mhm.
and just using self-reporting?
Yeah, we haven't done that in our pilots, but the state of Washington did do that kind of standard deduction type idea in one of their pilots and found that it was very well received by the participants of just saying, yeah, that's going to take care of, the mileage. I might go out of state, might, be driving around a parking lot, might be on my private ranch, those kind of things. So that is one avenue that we could pursue.
Okay, and then, to me, I prefer going to a vehicle registration fee for the sense of everything is well-defined, everybody is used to that. And I am concerned, as the supervisor mentioned, that those that travel more, while you're pointing out the numbers would be less depending on what your vehicle miles are. But I don't see as factoring in that additionally, those traveling longer distances that might be in those older cars, lower fuel efficiency, are also paying a significantly lower vehicle registration fee. So it seems to me that those two numbers should be factored together for that overall look of what that means. And the reason I bring this up is my concern is we've already been in a situation where those that are living farther away from their commuting jobs are paying a higher proportionate fees that we do not receive a benefit for. Specifically, the large urban centers, your big cities that have consistent traffic jams, those roads require more work. So in these studies, while you're specifically looking into road charge, did you do any research on the amount of damage that traffic jams do and how those dollars that would be generated under this system would be unequitably applied to certain regions on certain stretches of roads?
The answer is no.
I didn't think so, but.
We were given a reasonably, focused scope by the
Okay.
legislature to look at road charge on working on the collection side, like studying the mechanism, and what the impact would be. So we haven't necessarily looked at how the money is spent. I do want to just reiterate, though, that this money is already being spent. It's your money. What we're looking at in this kind of solution discussion is how do we stabilize your existing money? It's not a new source to find new ways to spend. It's the money you're currently using that we don't want to see go down, right? So it's not necessarily an opportunity for, now, there's always that discussion in the legislature, but the scope of our program really studied like, what does this mechanism do and how would it work and how would it affect people?
Oh, no, I agree. But it does tie directly into where you talk about it is more equitable for those that are in a lower efficiency vehicle, that they would pay less. But the fact is that eventually, even currently, our dollars are going to areas that require road repairs 3 to 5 times more than where we're traveling. And that should be part of the overall discussion. I do appreciate the focus of this study, absolutely, because sometimes these studies get way too big. I'm definitely concerned, though, on the sense where I have no trust in the state to swap out one system for another. And that is something we should all be on the watch for, because they will come back and look at just keeping a partial tax of gas tax. And these things, all your work would have been for naught if it's not done as you've studied it and swapped exactly over. But thank you, and I do appreciate the presentation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Great report. Wonderful information, and I thank you for representing what the state is doing. And that's all this presentation was. And I think, I just want to be clear, right? Because we're put at a disadvantage saying we don't have time to go through all of our questions and dig into this. The question is, when is staff going to allow us to have time to talk about it? Because I don't want to get to the legislative day and we have a big legislative package and this becomes a 20, 15-minute conversation about how we should vote. Because when they get here, they'll be talking about how we join that compact of other counties. They're not gonna be, you know, it doesn't make sense to have him wait for us to decide what we want to do. And so I think it's the opportunity for staff and the exec team to give us time to figure out how we want to think about this and where Monterey County is. And do we want to join that so-called compact? You know, I keep hearing this equity, I keep hearing this rule thing. I don't know if they're going to have room for us in that compact, but they're putting it together so we can have a wider voice to shape this. And so I thought we should have a little bit more time. It's not for us to try to convince this young lady. Well, it's not, because she's bringing the state view. And so our view is not the state view, and no matter what we say, they're not going to go back and readjust or add questions to their study. But it's good background information, but I really wanted us to talk about, I want us to have time to decide what we want to do, because I heard some good comments from everybody talking about it's not equal, so to speak. And I don't think we'll be able to figure that out, to be honest with you, because it's about miles traveled, and the state is stopping right at that level. You know, they're not concerned whether you're really in traffic or whether you have a long driveway or not, to be honest with you. No, to be honest with you, right? And so, but we can have a different stance. But when do we talk about that? That's what I would like for us and the exec team to figure out. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Lauren, for coming over and presenting this to us. Just a couple of, I think one quick question, one just broader question. The quick question is the account managers that you referenced in your presentation. So are their fees, et cetera, accounted for in that 2.8 cents that you coded?
The 2.8 cents for that specific pilot was set by the California Transportation Commission, and they did in their calculations include what they considered to be a 7% administrative cost. So yes, for that pilot. Whether that would be, you know, when it moved to the legislature, I don't know. It's also kind of a moving target as to what is revenue neutral, given the gas tax has the cost of living increase every July 1. So, you know, over time it moves as well, but it is a point of consideration.
Okay. And you may have heard some of the alternative proposals that we're putting here. I see this as like, come 2026, seems like you have some final decisions to be made, which means that you're almost a decade in the making in this road user charge kind of initiative. I do not see on other alternatives being a decade in the making to get to the point. Is that a fair statement?
I think the state has invested in more research on road use charging because it was one of the newer ideas, and so it was less understood. So they wanted to take the time to make sure all the things had been teased out. That doesn't mean that other options are necessarily non-explored, but they were maybe more established.
Okay, got it. I just want to point out that it seems like this is a long process just to get to this point from a state perspective. And any alternatives might take an equal amount of time. So, and I don't know how the gas taxes, I know it's deteriorating every year. So I don't know, the time is also a constraint from our standpoint. So to Mayor Ogilvy's point, whatever we can do to expedite proceedings here to convey some alternatives and put some backing around it, I think that needs to be done right now. Thank you.
Are you going back and forth?
No, but go ahead.
Quick question. One, if you're a low-tech,
Look at the microphone.
if you're a low-tech driver, and you want to report your mileage, is it, how do I report my mileage?
Right. So you could do something like going to a Jiffy Lube and having someone read your odometer and report it, similar to a smog check type process. You could take a picture of your odometer each month and send it to the account manager. Those are some of the more low-tech options that are there.
Okay. And then this might be out of your scope, but I wanted to ask your opinion. What do you think in broad terms about the vehicle registration alternative to road charge?
I think the state has many options, and I do want to clarify that the administration does not have a position either. They're not advocating for road charge at this time. Caltrans has done the research that the legislature has asked it to do. The administration has not made a decision any more than the legislature. So I think what's important in considering all the options before you is, one, doing the math. Because, let me backtrack here a little bit. The state has a lot of crucial goals. In this, particularly in this space, we hear climate goals, we hear equity goals, and then there's the revenue stabilization goals, right? And so you need to think out where your priority is, because I can tell you, you can't achieve all three of those in one policy tool. Maybe two-ish, but you can't get all three because they conflict with in different ways. So for example, if you want to give EV owners a discount because you want to incentivize EV uptake, okay, that's great. EVs tend to be owned by more wealthy people. So that's equity and climate conflicting, right? And then what does it do to the revenue and things? So what I would encourage you to do in your thoughts is make sure you've gone through the numbers, because if you guys want to focus on this is a revenue problem that we're trying to solve, you want to make sure that the option that you've settled on is hitting those numbers. Because if you give folks a low income discount, okay, great. How many people are getting a discount? Because keep in mind with the gas tax, there are no discounts right now. You get some exemptions for off-road miles, or the movement of agricultural goods has some discounts in the diesel sales tax specifically. But in general, everyone just pays up straight, right? So road charge does give you the opportunity to bring in some of those discounts if you want, but you need to make sure you understand the impact on revenue.
Do you have an opinion on the VRF alternative to road charge?
I have no opinions.
Good answer.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to say thank you for the presentation. And I don't know, I didn't see the PowerPoint, so if we can get a copy of it. I know there was other links to that. Yeah, and thank you for all the different comments. I think for me, just in terms of, there was a lot of discussion on equity, and I know for me, equity is really critical, especially in rural communities. And thank you for sharing that there, because I felt there's a disconnect between our climate goals and what we're trying to do here, right? That they're really not meshing with each other. And so they can be separate in the way we're looking at this. But I think for me, just a couple of comments is I agree with some of the comments that have been made, that I think for us in Monterey County is being able to really look at the data that we have locally. And what does that mean for our communities? What does it mean for Monterey County in terms of how that would impact our drivers, especially in the different pockets of the communities, to be able to have a better understanding of what is the best methodology to be able to support. I know that there's going to be upcoming meetings. You mentioned the 10, 20, 25 Assembly Committee, and then also the meeting in Watsonville in November the 3rd. So I think those are good opportunities if we can get some information, and maybe, again, just, presenting the our consultant vehicle registration information, if we can get that again to the board, just to be able to review that and have it fresh in our minds. My last comments on this is, we still have to look. So we're looking at, you're talking about DMV as well. And my concerns with that is that we're looking at DMV closures throughout the state happening, especially in some of the rural communities. So again, it's looking at some of that equity. And if we're trying to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, yet we're still encouraging the use of, those vehicles that emit more carbon emissions. And what are we really doing? Like, what do we want to address? And then for me is again, the impact on air quality and pollution that still exists in our rural communities, barriers to the use of systems that are challenging for certain populations. So we have elderly, veterans, and communities of color, and broadband is still a challenge. So if you're implementing a tool that's going to require a lot, I'll tell you, in my communities, it's going to be really difficult to be able to ensure that all that happens. And as you spoke about the benefits of EV vehicles, I mean, that was a great concept. However, for many of our communities, disadvantaged communities, there is no disposable income. Right. So they don't have access to those rebates where they can say, I have money stashed and I can utilize those rebates up front. So I think when we talk about degree of equity, I think it's really important for us to really ensure what are we talking about and defining what is that degree of equity that's going to impact our community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all of those considerations are really important. And as we have looked at, the potential structure of this program, equity in the structure, I think, is just as important as equity in the rates. And we've done a lot of thinking about, how do different reporting options work for more senior folks. I remember specifically one of our pilots, we had something that was very app-based, and I thought it was just fantastic and it worked so well. But I also had my dad enroll in the pilot, and I got an angry phone call going, "What is this? Why can't I just call someone?" And it was a good moment of just like, okay, different generations interact with different things, different cultures interact differently with technology. We want to make sure that we have payment options for the unbanked, all these things. So yes, we're thinking about all those things in the implementation of the program to make sure that, this is something that can work for all Californians.
I will be brief. So thank you for your presentation. And just a question I had was, how will the formula affect or work with public transportation? So the buses that are running all day that, they're carrying more people and they are going electric or different type biofuels. So just, I'm wondering how that will work. Is it the same per mile through the miles? And I'm wondering if that would cause rates being charged extra to the consumers.
Yeah, that's a great question. So currently, transit agencies basically have the opportunity to not pay gas taxes. And so we anticipate that the legislature, particularly given the state of transit funding right now, and that's a whole different discussion, but also critical, that they might want to continue having that exemption. So you could exempt transit or school buses from paying, a government agency if the legislature wanted to. If they were not exempted, I would expect, given the weight, that they'd kind of fall more on the commercial vehicle category side of things. And again, as I mentioned, we have that report on our website about the administrative structure. Commercial vehicles, we anticipate, would be overseen by the California Department of Tax and Fee Administration, which is currently the state agency that administers the International Fuel Tax Agreement Program, which is the existing structure that states use to trade out gas taxes from trucks that are moving across states. So it's an existing structure that the trucking industry is used to using, and we would roll that into that. So it could go either way. It would be a decision for the legislature.
Sorry. Thank you. And then Carl Miller online, one of our additional reps.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the presentation. Just a couple quick questions. Currently, it's my understanding we have one of the highest gas taxes in the country. Is that true?
Yes.
And how would we handle visitors from other states or people that move to California or live on the borders and have out-of-state registration? Would they just escape taxes altogether?
That's an excellent question. So we have done some research with other states. We're actually part of a research consortium with 18 other states that are looking at this, including Oregon, Washington, and Nevada, so all of our neighboring points of contact. And we've definitely studied and tested an interoperable system that's based on this idea of a central clearinghouse. It's kind of drawing some ideas from the current IFTA system that I mentioned. So we have tested that concept. It's there. The issue is, I doubt that on one given day, all states would suddenly shift to a road use charge system, right? So there would definitely be transition periods. There's that potential for managing that. There's also, but that depends on certain technology issues. We could also handle things, as I mentioned, with the deduction. Fortunately, the out-of-state travel thing is not as big of a revenue impact for California. We actually have, even though we're such a large state, we actually have really few points where people cross over specifically. So it wouldn't be the biggest revenue impact. Where it really is an issue is states like New England, where they have people driving in multiple states on any given day. So that is something that we have explored, and there's a system out there. It's going to be a transition though, but it's definitely something we've looked at.
And finally, is it envisioned that this tax will go away completely, the current tax system, and be replaced by this? Because I think the danger is that you just end up with another tax.
Madam Chair, can we follow the protocols of speaking their 2-3 minutes and then answering the questions at the end rather than a back and forth with our guest speaker?
Yeah, we have, our transportation providers though are part of our board, and I'm treating them as such right now. So we're going to allow this right now. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, what was the question?
Well, I forgot the question myself. No, it was just the danger that
Oh, right. Well,
will it
I
go
think we
away
did talk about that a
completely?
little bit already with the previous question.
Yeah, so we studied it as a replacement. What the legislature chooses to do is what the legislature chooses to do.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
And before we go through another round of comments, questions, I do think part of the feedback that we're hearing here is there is a desire for more conversation about this. Clearly, more than I think what we anticipated when we were putting this on the agenda. And so I think part of our next steps would potentially be putting together a study session so that we can delve deeper outside of a board meeting with our members, our alternates, maybe our public works teams, or whoever you think is appropriate from our city, possibly with Gus and maybe some of our partner regions. I think maybe that can be part of our next steps that we proceed with. Also thinking about maybe 3CE as regional partners in this conversation, and our legislative teams from whoever has ledge staff available. Anyway, so that is, I think, maybe a good next step where we can spend some more time reading through all of the attachments, because there's quite a bit of additional information. And I think a lot of the questions that were posed today could be answered with the attached information. And so I'll just make those comments, and then if there's anyone who has additional feedback, we'll just make sure we make a second round. So Luis, did you have more to say? No? Okay, all right. Let's open it up to public comment then. Anyone who has public comment for the good of the order, we would love to hear from you. 2 minutes is what we allow. And if you're in the room, you may approach the podium. Otherwise, you can raise your hand and we will call on you. And I will just need some help identifying any hands raised.
I don't see any.
I don't see any hands raised. So we will close. Yeah, yes? Hold on, let me close public comment so that we can move on from this item. This was just receiving some information. And if there's no objection, I think I'll work with Todd and the executive team to get a study session scheduled so that we are prepared to take a position and engage in more detailed discussion on this issue. But yes, go ahead.
And that's where I was just going to ask for clarification. The study session is outside of a board meeting or during a board meeting?
I would suggest that we do it outside of a board meeting so that we can have, we're not bound by quorum and we can invite other individuals and, but if there's a feeling strongly different.
My understanding, especially the way you presented it, it's the discussion amongst the board members where we would be ended up, I don't mind the additional information, that's great. But I think it should be a discussion at the board level on these topics, as Mayor Oglesby mentioned, is where we would figure out what our position was. So when would that come up, and what is the timeline that we would have to have that decision in place?
So let me give that to Todd. So my thought was a study session would allow us to have whoever's interested in really digging deep into this and understanding it and having a space where we can spend time with other experts on these ideas, and then bring the discussion back to this space so that we're not bound by quorum and all of the other limits. But we'll have to work with council and all of those other factors to make sure we do it right. But what is our timeline for having to come back and take positions?
Well, we have a couple different timelines, and one is for our general legislative platform for next year. And we're scheduled to discuss that at the October TAMC board meeting. But our legislative platform has included for a long time, find a replacement for the gas tax. So I think that's going to continue. And the question is, which of these types of programs does the board want to support? I'm with something like a study session. It's going to take a little longer than October to bring that to the board and have enough time. So I suspect we'll have some time between now and the start of the next legislative cycle where bills are introduced to dive into this some more and then take a position and be able to convey that to our legislative representatives.
Yeah, for me, Chair, that still wasn't an answer. And I don't think we wait to the legislature to start. I mean, we can have whatever time frame, but let's just set on a time frame. Because again, I don't know when the consultant is coming back to say, let's join this compact and where do we stand? And, you know, I just think that puts us behind the 8 ball. But I'm supportive of the conversation, but I would just like to know a better timeline than just sometime before, during, close to the legislative act and the bill's passing. Right, I think that's too late for us because if we want to join another group, the other counties, we don't know what they're offering. We don't know where we want to stand. So if we're talking about a so-called study session, we should be able to schedule that way before what I just heard. I mean,
To clarify, there's not a compact out there of parties rallying around a certain position at this point.
Yeah.
We've had a discussion with our legislative advocate who represents a range of other agencies around the state who have similar interests. And so what we're really trying to do is educate the board and whether we want to join forces and advocate for a certain position is the direction we want to get from the board when we're ready. I need time to find out when people are available to have a study session and then to be able to schedule it. But it's certainly want to have it at the latest, the beginning of next year. And that will give time to provide input for any legislative process, because that does take quite a bit of time. And we'll go through a lot of vetting before it hits the governor's desk for a signature. So I do think between now and beginning of next year is the goal. And it's just a matter of getting the schedules aligned to have the right people in the room to answer all the questions.
Through the chair, I would just say, you know, I'll let the board decide if they want to wait that long. But my point about the compact is, just like what you just said, if we're actually checking and waiting to other counties, see what they say, and we may agree with them, that is a compact, that is agreement between those counties. And that's what that consultant is trying to take to the legislature is, I got 5 or 6 counties, some big, some small, and they seem to agree around this viewpoint. That was my own comment. And just the fact is, I'm not saying we need to be with them. I'm saying, I thought we said, we're waiting for him to put that group together and then get back with us. So I'll just move on, Chair, and I know other people want to talk, and it's up to the full board about how long we want to wait. Those are my comments. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So I think, so moving forward, our goal is to get to a place where we had to start by educating the board about the options in front of us. So this was a presentation about what the state's actions have been. We had a presentation previously about what Gus Corey's suggestion is. So educating the board about the 2 options that we've had. We still have to have a conversation about what the board wants to give direction on. But given the conversation today, it's clear that there's more questions and we need more time to have conversation. So I will work with Todd. We will expeditiously attempt to get a study session scheduled, whether that's as a formal meeting or as a workshop type schedule, so that we can get everyone's questions answered, provide additional information, so that we're prepared to come back to this board, and that this board has all of their questions answered, so that we're prepared to make a clear direction to Gus about how to move forward with the position in a timely manner that's appropriate. So I think that's what I'm hearing, I think, as a direction, consensus-wise, to move forward. So unless there's objections to that as a pathway to move forward, Luis.
Madam Chair, I just wanted to, at least from my point of view, I don't want to create an appearance like there's a need to rush this, because there isn't. This is going to take years. before the legislature act on it. So there's nothing imminent. There's not a bill that's gonna move next year. We're, from my point of the California State Association of Counties, there's not a bunch of counties already say we gotta make a decision imminently. I just checked with Chris, RCRC, they're having discussions, but again, no immediate action. And we all know on this issue, Caltrans knows this is gonna take some time here. So I would just say, let's not think that we have to make a decision by early next year, because we don't. A study session, I think, would get more participation during one of our regular scheduled meetings. But I just wanted to put that in context, that there isn't something imminent that we have to decide something in the next 6 months.
Great, thank you. Okay, so any objection to the path I outlined moving forward? Okay, we've got some thumbs up. So with that, we will accept this report. And thank you so much for spending your morning with us, Lauren. We appreciate all of your answers to our questions and the additional information you provided. There was a question about the link number 3 that was provided. And I'm just going to state that it worked for me, but it is for anyone who wasn't able to access that, it is CAROADCHARGE.com. So CARoadcharge.com is the actual link that was the third link on the board packet for anyone who it didn't work for. CARoadcharge.com.
And all of our research is there. I think you guys are asking the right questions. Actually, it's really exciting to see you wrestling with it. So keep up the good work. I'm available, happy to come back if that's helpful, happy to meet with you one-on-one to sort through questions, whatever I can do, I'm happy to do it.
Great, thank you so much. We
Thank you.
appreciate the detailed answers. All right, and we will continue this conversation. Okay, moving forward, we have a presentation on the North County Safe Routes to School Plan and the participatory budgeting process. We have Amelia.
I'm sorry.
Oh, no,
No, US 101.
what did I miss? Oh, I'm sorry. We have, I did skip right over. Our executive authorized a request for our executive director to request Caltrans use of the construction manager general contractor CMGC delivery method for improvements to the US 101 south of Salinas corridor. And I'm just going to do a time check. It is about 10:48, and we are committed to getting everyone out of here before noon. So we've got Doug here to present. Thanks.
All right, good morning, Chair and board members. Yes, we're here to talk about what's called Construction Manager, General Contractor, CMGC. It is a technical term, but we think it's ideal for emphasizing the ability to deliver on US 101 south of Salinas. So before we ask you to authorize our executive director to request Caltrans to use it, we wanted to explain to you what it is and give you some background in it. We hired Tony Harris a few years ago as our corridor advisor. And one of the reasons why is his experience with this method. US 101 is complex with all the hydrology issues that go on. We want to pull in innovation, and we're going to have some funding challenges, project phasing. So with that, Tony couldn't be here, but he's going to present virtually. And just so you know, he is not a CM or a GC, so he doesn't have a conflict, but he's used this method, and he's going to talk to us about his experience. So, and we also have Carl, who has used this method for the SURF project. So with that, I'll hand it over to Tony.
Good morning, board members. First, can everyone hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
All right, great. Doug, thanks for the introduction. My name is Tony Harris. My consultant firm is Point C. My background is civil engineer. I've done project management, transportation funding. Previously worked at Federal Highway Administration, Caltrans, and been in construction practice and consultant practice for quite a while. I'm going to do a presentation today, and I'm going to talk about the construction manager, general manager, project delivery process, and how that compares to the traditional design bid bill. Briefly chat about what type of projects is best suited for in particular, and talk about some of the opportunities and challenges related to the program. Then I will also talk about my experience in working with Caltrans and the Santa Barbara Council of Government using this delivery method on the Highway 101 multimodal corridor in Santa Barbara for the last 10 years and delivering that almost $1 billion program. And I will conclude by talking about the 101 South Salinas project and how this delivery method could benefit the delivery and completion of that project. So with this slide, this is just a very high level to give you a comparison of the design bid build process and the construction manager general contractor. The primary point I want to point out is with design bid build, you don't get input from the contractor until you get in the selection process and then while they're doing construction. Versus with construction manager, general contractor, you basically hire the general contractor doing the environmental process. And it's a qualification-based selection process, and they provide input during the design to the designers. And at the conclusion of design, there is a negotiation on the price to construct the project, and you go into it. You'll see that typically this delivery method, there's time savings, but also opportunities to address risk and innovation upfront to provide more cost certainty at the end of the project. There we go. All right. So what type of projects are best suited for CMGC? You want a project that the scope is well defined, okay? You also want a project that there are some technical complexity to it. I mean, the simpler projects are better suited for design bid build. In addition to that, you want projects that clearly there will be opportunity for innovations and a chance to accelerate the schedule, especially when there's envision that with super large projects, they're very costly, that they're probably built in segments and phases. Next, please. So what has been done in using the CMGC process? Well, in advance of going to construction, designers, they design the project and they make assumptions about how a contractor would build the project. By having the contractor there doing the pre-construction phases, you get that direct input from a contractor about, this is how I would build it. This is how I would stage the construction. So, and also they will do a basically cost-based estimating so you get a better understanding. Just as important is innovative ideas they could bring to the table that would result in mitigating risks and also potential cost certainty in moving forward. For example, in some of the projects, the contractor has been very helpful with utility coordination where we have to relocate and also attaining permits. A lot of times you go to a resource agency to ask for permits. They want to understand how the project will be constructed. With the contractor on board, you can clearly have the contractor say, no, this is exactly how I would build it, right? And then once you get through pre-construction, and if you're able to achieve price agreement, then you can move very quickly into construction. Next. So the opportunities that you get from CMGC is to mitigate the risks. And I should also say identifying the risks more so up front as well and how we address them. Then construction cost certainty, all right? And I'll talk more about those two items on a later slide. The streamline of the delivery method, anytime you have a large project that will be completed in segment or phasing, you run the risk of overlap between those contracts. And it's more challenging when you have different contractors doing that. And you can optimize the schedule about if certain scope is included in different segments, it could result in cost and time saving. Design quality is important. You get feedback early on with constructability, and of course, innovation. And I previously talked about the assist with third parties permits. But what are the challenges? Well, the challenges is that interaction between the designer and the contractor. Sometimes a designer may think they know best, or the contractor may think they know best. You have to work through that approach so that you reach consensus, which is done on these type of delivery methods. Estimate reconciliation. Normally with design bid build, the contractor is just submitting a bid. With CMGC, it's really a cost-based approach where you actually look at the quantities, you look at the costs, and you also take into account the contractor's profit margin that's considered in that part. It's important that to use this method, you have to be open to innovations. Now, to be open to innovation, that requires a little more time and effort and research to see if that innovation makes sense for that particular project. Every project is different, okay? And then sometimes based on that contractor input, it will trigger the need to do some redesign work before you actually get in construction. Because you are engaged in a general contractor and you also will have engaged an independent cost estimator, the pre-construction cost is higher. And that typically could be 1.5% to 2%, but you get more cost certainty when you get into construction with less change orders and little to no claims. Next. So as I said, I wanted to talk more about risk mitigation and cost certainty. With that CMGC process, you get that input upfront to the designer about the risk, the challenges they see getting out to construction. Or they say, if we need to get more information about this issue in pre-construction so we can better estimate what the cost will be in construction. So you have the opportunity to modify the design to minimize the risk, and in some cases, even avoid it. But what typically happens as well is every project has a contingency. Before you reach agreement on the price, risks and costs associated with it is identified. And contractors' risks are identified and included in the construction contracts in the price upfront because it's known. Other risks, the owner, such as Caltrans, may decide, no, we want to control that risk, and we will include that in our contingency. And if that risk comes about, we know exactly how much it's going to cost, and we would fund that out of contingency instead of having the contractor control that money. With design bid build, the designer does the design with no general contractor input. That general contractor, when they bid, it's a low bid approach. If you're not the lowest qualified bidder, then you're not selected. So their first objective is to win the contract, all right? Typically, when it comes to contingency is a percentage of the construction contract, which is a percentage of the low bid contract in a range of 5 to 10%, typically what it would be. And then as you get into construction, you use that contingency to fund change orders and claims. And the contractor is identifying those change orders and claims. And then it becomes the negotiation doing it. And sometimes it results in the need for additional funding that's not known for, which is why I was talking about certainty. So let's talk about Santa Barbara Highway 101 corridor improvements. I was engaged with this project with Caltrans, Santa Barbara Council of Government. A decision was made almost 10 years ago to use the CMG delivery approach because we knew it was going to have to be done in segments. We knew there would be overlapping contractors. And I want to talk about that experience that we had on this project. Next. So the project had very, very complex staging, all right? There was a commitment that we was not going to close any 2 adjacent ramps. There was a commitment that we was going to always keep the same number of lanes open to traffic. That definitely required input from the general contractor on how we could achieve that. The project was broken up into multiple segments and phases. And just the fact that we had the same contractor was critical. If we went to a low bid approach for each one of those, then it's very likely we would have had very different contractors and we would have had claims and issues between the 2 contracts. There was times when we had a contract and we get out in construction and we're working on an adjacent project in pre-construction. Decision was made that, hey, if we could do this stage work over here, then we could save time on the next contract. With CMGC, we had that flexibility, and it's resulting in, accelerating the overall completion. Design flexibility to align with funding. We had an opportunity that came up on this project, and that opportunity was that Caltrans had identified a significant amount of State Highway Operation Protection Program funding, and that funding had to be allocated for construction date certain. We was able to identify a construction contract and take advantage of that additional funding that was not known that came about and use it in this quarter to help advance the completion. And the quarter also had significant railroad. The railroad ran adjacent to 101, just as it does in South of Salinas, and we had significant utilities. We used a task team approach where Caltrans, SBCAG, the contractor, sat down on a regular basis with the utility companies to work through how we was going to address relocations or protect in place on some utilities. And we did a similar approach with the railroad to identify, how we utilize some of that right of way or not utilize that right of way and what agreements we need in place. So let's talk 101 south of Salinas. A lot of work has been done by Caltrans, TAMC in identifying the alternatives to study an environmental document. The alternatives are basically frontage road throughout the corridor on both sides and reconstruction of the Chular interchange and reconstruction of the Abbott interchange. And that process is moving forward, which is now is ideal time to talk about the overall delivery method. So why would CMGC be a benefit to 101 south of Salinas? One, risk mitigation. In this quarter, there's drainage issues that we all know about. There's going to have to be looking at building it in segments. There's improvements that are within Caltrans right away. There's improvements that ultimately, when you do the frontage road, that will become county's facilities. So it's important to get that contractor's input during the design stage so we can minimize those and we can incorporate in the design or as we go into construction cost certainty, get input on how it could be built and how we could basically identify those costs as part of the contract. Design flexibility. This is a significant project that has a significant price tag. And the need will be to pursue funding from multiple funding sources. Project readiness is key in being able to attain funding. And CMGC process is significant in helping achieve that project readiness and helping identify construction packages that will align with some of the funding opportunities upcoming. Schedule optimization. Using this approach and having the same contractor allows time savings on the schedule or getting certain segments and components open and usable to the surrounding community and the traveling public. And innovation is critical. As I said earlier, this quarter has railroad that's running adjacent to it. It's always a challenge in working with Union Pacific, but that is something we will have to do as we'll be closing crossings. We will have some railroad overheads going over the tracks. And then again, we will need to get permits as related to different things. So with that, that is why I wanted to do a presentation and come forth to the board to talk about whether or not support TAMC requesting Caltrans using the CMGC method for the US 101 South Salinas. And with that, I would entertain any questions anyone may have.
Great, thank you for the presentation. We will bring it back to the board for questions and we'll go to Anna. We'll go to Director Velasquez and then Director Delgado.
Yeah, thank you for, thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I do have a question. I know you talked about it's a little bit different because you're doing the bidding process is under an RFQ instead of the Public Works RFP process. So can you just elaborate, I'm sorry, just explain a little bit more that that's allowable under the Public Contracts Code because you're doing it a little bit differently, but you're still going out to a competitive process, right? I think for me, the transparency and competitive process is what I want to make sure that that happens as part of the RFQ.
So this delivery method is allowed in state law as a requirement. It started out initially where Caltrans was allowed to do it on a pilot basis. It's no longer considered a pilot. It is a legally allowed and in state law as a delivery method. The general contractor is basically selected on a qualification-based approach. The subcontractors that will work for the general contractor actually does a procurement where they advertise the design out to all the subcontractors and allow the subcontractors to bid on it. The actual selection of the subcontractor is a joint effort between Caltrans, and it will also be TAMC in this situation, and the general contractor as which subcontractors are selected. It also takes into account, the price for subcontractors. It creates the opportunity for other contractors to work in the quarter. And it also takes into account the disadvantaged business program and its goals and those requirements. So that is the approach. It takes place as you're working through to reach agreement on the actual cost and value of the construction contract.
Yeah, thank you. And I just want to say if that works better, because I know obviously with these large projects, I think the issue that we always see is the cost overruns, right? And the increase of the what is it called?
Change orders.
The change orders. And so you're saying that this is a method that's going to support to decrease some of that, because a lot of that is being discussed at the beginning instead of once a general contractor is engaged. So thank you for providing that information and stating that it's allowable under a state law that could be used for big, larger projects like this.
One thing we don't go into depth on this, but there's an independent cost estimator. So we get a third party that does a cost estimate before the bid. And when the general contractor puts in the bid, we negotiate it. If we don't come to negotiation, they're too far apart, then it does go out to bid.
Okay, so it depends.
Yeah, if it's not a good price, in our opinion, then we go out to bid.
Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. The City Marina had a similar presentation because we are looking at this CMGC process as a way to build our aquatic center. And the two takeaways I got was, as I mentioned, of course, it's much better to have the contractor and the architect talking early so that they get something that's doable. And that there was also a huge cost guarantee for the city because the contractor is on the hook to stay within cost estimates that they agreed to. Can you explain that? I know you already mentioned it, but can you talk about that a bit more?
Yeah, what happens in doing the cost part is to achieve the agreed upon price. The contractor is given the plans and the quantities, and they come back with their estimate associated with it. And they also provide information on their costs as relates to certain risk-related items. As Doug mentioned, at the same time that the general contractor is hired during the environmental process, the independent cost estimator is hired. That independent cost estimator will provide input on those innovations. They also do an independent cost estimate. The independent cost estimate is normally contractor cost estimate. So they do it the same way, okay? And then at that point, there's a negotiation to basically discuss the differences between what that general contractor provide and the independent cost estimate. And then you come to an agreement on that price, and that is locked in the value of the contract. In the Santa Barbara situation, we've had, knock on wood, no claims whatsoever, and we're coming down to some of our last contracts, and their change orders have been primarily what was known upfront at the time that we would negotiate an agreed to price. So you get cost certainty going into construction. You go to design bid build, the contractor give you their low bid, and you have a contingency that is based upon a percentage. But as you go through constructing the work, you could still have change orders that some unforeseen because you don't have the contractor input. But also there could be claims related to not being able to come to an agreement on requested change orders. And those sometimes result in the need to come back and ask for additional funding to complete construction.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I very much appreciated the presentation. And Carl, just in case I'm wrong, King City, MST used this process for the King City operation facility?
May I answer that through the chair? Yeah. So MST is using this design, this project delivery method for the SURF project. Actually, we've used design bid build for the construction of the Monterey facility. We did design build for the King City facility and CMGC for this. So it's really, as the presenter demonstrated, it really depends on the complexity of the project and the other factors involved. And I have to say, you know, all of these methods can work, but what CMGC offers, as well as design build, I think is more certainty of the cost. It's not necessarily going to reduce the cost, but it gives you more certainty, reduces risk, accelerates scheduled delivery, which has its own savings involved. Our experience in the Monterey facility that we built in 2018 on a design bid build, our change orders ultimately by the end of construction exceeded the amount of the design. That led to, while we came in on budget and on time, it still that process led to, you know, threatened litigation, negotiated settlements that lasted for, you know, a good year after construction, just because of the way that project went down with regard to problems with the design once the construction element came in. So if you want more certainty and less headaches, perhaps, you know, we're very bullish, at least on our project so far with the SURF. The CMGC model has worked very well for us.
I appreciate that, because I was just curious. I couldn't remember if that was part of the project, and so thank you for the explanation. And for regarding the presentation, I've seen a lot of these positives before, but the one thing I didn't know was that time savings. And for the US 101 project, that time savings is not just dollars, it's actual lives. So that to me is probably the most important thing, and I hope we do consider this as allowing Caltrans to use this process to move forward, because that will save, at a minimum, I think 2 to 3 months is what, would be your consideration on that time savings, where on the other one, going out the bid process, the creation of the packet and going out the bid is what, 2 to 3 months, you think, or could it be longer?
It could be longer. It could be as much as, you know, 4 to 6 months by the time you go through that process. But I think more significantly, the time savings is when you have overlapping contracts and being able to have that same contractor work with the designer to determine staging that will allow the completion sooner versus later. If I can't imagine what the timing would have been if we did not use this method in Santa Barbara. I believe it would have been years of additional time.
Okay, thank you. So I'm definitely in favor of this.
Yeah, I had the exact same thought as Mayor LaBarre. I appreciate the conversation around the financial savings, and that is critical. And I think that taking this approach for that reason is worth it. But the more important piece to me is the time, because one of those things that's going to happen between now and the time that this project moves is that those at-grade crossings between Salinas and Chular are going to close. And that means that all this additional traffic, specifically truck traffic, is going to get routed through Chular. So on an equity basis, that community is going to be facing a lot of trucks through town that they're not experiencing today. We've done some work to change the amount of buildup on the off-ramp backing onto the freeway, but it's not going to be able, in my opinion, to hold up to all those trucks that have to make that left-hand turn and cross through that tiny town, which we know is primarily low-income residents. So on an equity basis, speeding this up as much as possible to get that traffic rerouted and out of town is a priority for me. So I am supportive of this project, especially for that reason, but know that the financial piece is critical to me as well. But as Mayor LaBarre said, the lives, right? The lives that we've lost there, nearly lost there just in the last few months, they're worth this. So thank you.
Caltrans would like to, yeah.
I can wait for others. I just wanted to add a little bit when the time is, okay. So Scott Heats here with Caltrans. I have had deep experience working in the Santa Barbara 101 corridor, so have been able to be involved from the beginning of that process. It was really rewarding in terms of the ability to work closely with the contractor and really just work through some challenging complexities that project had. And I think I agree it's applicable to this corridor. I did want to clarify that what's in front of you today is to request that Caltrans consider it we have a nomination process that we would be moving through. So we effectively at the district level would be putting together a package of information, working with TAMC staff that would send it up to headquarters for a group to evaluate. They provide consideration to a number of different alternative delivery and traditional delivery methods. And then out of that process can result often in, I'm sure in this case, I suspect that it'll result in a conclusion that CMGC is an appropriate delivery method and they would support it. And then once we have that approval, then we move more deeply into the process of securing the CMGC contractor, which is a whole secondary process. And I will say that the sooner, if we are going to use it in this corridor, the sooner we can do it, the better. That the benefits are there of trying to get the contractor on early, so we can begin that early coordination, get their early insights into the design and early opportunities for innovations. And so we're supportive of beginning this process if the board wants to move in that direction.
Great, thank you. I'm going to go to, I saw Ed Smith. I know you're not voting with us today, Ed. But
I'm
we'd
here.
love to hear. Yep, thank you.
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can, thanks.
Yes. Yeah, thank you very much for the presentation. Yeah, I just wanted to offer that I do lean into the possibility for all the reasons that have been outlined in the presentation by Mr. Harris. And I think it's important to recognize that we've all encountered these projects where change orders are really the killers. But when we can bring together the parties and eliminate a lot of those pitfalls, I think the opportunity there is for the overall savings ultimately. And when you have fewer contractors and fewer players, I think the benefits are usually obvious for a speed coordination, especially when we have such a highly technical project that we'll be facing, as has been mentioned by Supervisor Lopez, is being able to have fewer coordination pieces to be able to navigate during that construction phase. And I know we're a long ways away from that, but I would express the support for pursuing this with Caltrans. That would be my preference. I just wanted to offer that I think it's the right way to go in this time of large-scale construction projects. And I think that the state has many, many examples of how proficient it's been rather than going down the path of the lowest bidder process. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Ed. Okay, so there were some additional, Director Velasquez.
Yeah, just for clarification. So today, obviously, as you mentioned, it's just for consideration. So we will learn more about, obviously, if it gets approved, more about the time savings and the timeline for completion. That'll come back to the board with approval, cost savings, and construction timeline. So we don't know that yet here, but if we approve it, that'll come back to the board with all of those details, correct? I just want to make sure that's what we're.
This is just authorizing me to move forward, working with Caltrans to start the process, and there will be a lot more in the future.
Yeah, but you'll never know, it's kind of, you're deciding to go on a path. So you won't know your cost savings because we just don't know the complexities of what we're saving. It's a process that we're committing to with the understanding that a streamlined process typically saves you time at the end. It reduces your change order frustration and redesigns. So we just are going with the assumption that that will result in a better project, but we won't ever know. We're not going to come back to you and say, well, it'll save us 10% or 5%. We won't know that.
Okay, but we will have some inclination. Oh.
Can I add to that a little bit? I think what's most important is this delivery method provides cost certainty, okay? And it clearly provides time savings, and time savings does means saving money. I envision that if this delivery method is pursued, as we have individual contracts information, there will be regular updates provided to this board on each one of those contracts. You'll be able to clearly quantify that cost certainty and saving near the end of the construction on these projects. We can do projections, but the fact of the matter is, using this approach, we'll expect a lot less unknown change orders and little to no claims.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that clarification.
Great. And Delgado, did you have additional? Did I see your hand? No? Okay. So last round for final comments. Okay. Let's go to public comment. Is there any public comment on this item? If you're in audience? Nope. Anyone online for public comment? I'm not seeing any hands raised. We are going to do last call for public comment. And then we're going to close public comment, bring it back to entertain a motion.
Happy to make a motion to move staff recommendation to recommend the use of this process to Caltrans.
Second. Okay, we have a motion from Lopez. I heard a second from Labar. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? None opposed? All right, motion is passed. All right, thank you. And thank you all for the, again, robust discussion. Moving along now to the North County Safe Routes to School Plan and the participatory budgeting process. Now we have Amelia Cohen with us. Thanks.
Good morning, board members, members of the public. My name is Amelia Conlon. I'm a senior transportation planner with the agency, and I'm here to give an update on the North Monterey County Safe Routes to Schools Plan and the participatory budgeting process. Next slide. So this plan is the latest Safe Routes to Schools plan that the agency is working on. We've completed plans in Marina and Seaside, the city of Salinas, and the 4 South County cities. And this North County plan covers 11 schools in unincorporated North Monterey County. Like our other planning efforts, this project is a partnership between the County Health Department and Public Works Departments, Ecology Action, the Center for Community Advocacy, and the 2 school districts in North County. And it's funded through a Caltrans Sustainable Communities Transportation Planning Grant, as well as Measure X matching funds. Here is the overall plan timeline. So we kicked off this project at the beginning of 2024. We went out to each of the 11 schools in fall of 2024 to hear from parents and school staff about the safety issues around each school and to conduct walking audits where we observed traffic during the morning pickup and afternoon drop-off and identify any safety issues. And we used that list of issues that we identified and worked with a consultant, Alta Planning and Design, to develop a list of recommendations for both infrastructure projects and non-infrastructure programs to help improve safety, and reviewed that list with County Public Works staff this past spring. We formed a steering committee as part of this project that you'll hear more about in just a moment, and kicked off that steering committee in May of 2024, and they finished their last meeting in June of this year. And we're also doing a pilot project as part of this project, which is in place now in Castroville. It's a temporary traffic calming pilot project. I'm a little worried about it in the rain this morning, but the goal there is to test out some new ideas and hear from the community whether they like them, want to see them made permanent. And we'll be returning to you in 2026 to present on the draft and final plan. Next slide. So many of you are familiar with participatory budgeting from our work in the Salinas Valley cities. Participatory budgeting is a process by which community members can vote on how to spend a public budget. And the agency has allocated $1 million in funding to construct the projects that are voted as top priority by the community. Next slide. Thank you. This is a graphic that illustrates the participatory budgeting process. So it is typically done through a steering committee. And the first step is for the steering committee to decide how the ballot will be structured, what the rules of the election will be, and how to best do community engagement to reach community members. The steering committee brainstorms ideas for projects that will go on the ballot and then selects the projects that will go on the ballot. And in this case, we had a project list to work from that was developed by Alta Planning. Once the ballot is developed, the community can vote on the proposal that they feel best addresses the community's needs. And the final step in the process is to fund the winning projects. And we're getting very close to that step right now. Next slide. So we started this process by forming the steering committee, and we did that by working with our partners and especially with the school district. We got really great support from the North County School District, who does an amazing job reaching out to their parents and community. And we, throughout the process, held 12 monthly steering committee meetings. These were a significant time commitment. These were 3-hour meetings, and we provided dinner and childcare to make it easier for folks to participate. Overall, we had 84 people attend at least one meeting, and 31 people attended at least 4 meetings. So that was our core group of committee members. Thank you. This is a picture of our steering committee in action. And you can go to the next slide. And we had some decisions to make with this process that we did not have in South County. In South County, the process was very clear cut. We had 4 cities, we had 4 steering committees, we had a $250,000 budget per city. For North County, we had a large unincorporated area, no incorporated cities. And so we had some questions about where we would fund projects and what the budget would look like. And the first decision that the steering committee had to make was how to divide North County into different communities. And they decided to split North County into these 5 communities and to fund at least one project in each of those 5 communities. And those communities were Castroville, including the high school, Las Lomas, Pajaro, and the areas around Ohlone Elementary, Prunedale, and then the areas around Echo Valley and Elkhorn Elementaries. And this is an example of what the ballot looked like for Castroville. Next slide. So then the steering committee had to establish a budget, and they ended up approving 11 criteria that we used to measure the relative need in each of these 5 communities. So we looked at things like whether there were existing sidewalks in these communities. We looked at income data. We looked at the number of students, and we looked at whether there were projects already in the works coming to these communities, and went through an evaluation process to score each community on each of the 11 criteria. That criteria is included in your packet, and came up with this budget. So Echo Valley and Elkhorn scored the highest, received the highest percentage of the budget, followed by Las Lomas and Pajaro, which were tied for second. And Castroville came in at the bottom spot, mainly because while not a perfect sidewalk network, there are more sidewalks in Castroville than many of the other communities. And there are several projects that are coming soon to Castroville that are going to be bringing many millions of dollars in funding for safety projects. So those were really the 2 factors that led to that lower score. Next slide. So once the steering committee chose projects for the ballot, we were ready to hold the election. And that took place at the end of April and beginning of May of this past year. And our steering committee members really led the charge to get the word out to their community. We had banners at each of the school sites and in-person ballot boxes and ballots at each of the schools, as well as the Castroville Library and Prunedale Library and Casa de la Cultura in Pajaro. And steering committee members identified events that would be good places to do outreach. This photo is from Dia del Nino, which was an event hosted by the school district in Castroville. Steering committee members did a tremendous job reaching out to their neighbors, to other parents, and encouraging them to vote. And we ended up receiving almost 300 votes at this event alone. So we're really happy to be able to partner with the school district on this. Next slide. Overall, we received almost 1,000 ballots, very close. The majority of those were paper ballots, so people voting in person, and the majority of those ballots were received in Spanish. Next slide. And these are the election results that summarize the winning proposals for each of the communities. The full list of projects in each of these winning proposals is included in your packet. And you can see that we were over budget. The winning proposals were slightly over budget for some of these communities. Fortunately, some of these proposals included signage and striping around schools, and the county had some existing funding for school signage and striping that they were able to use to help us meet that overage. So we did not have to make the hard decision of cutting projects out of the winning proposals, and the steering committee was able to recommend that the winning proposals be funded. Next slide. So in total, we're recommending that TAMC contribute $1 million in funding to fund the winning projects. And the county has committed to funding $21,500 in signage and striping projects. For this project, some of the winning projects were on school district property, which was not the case with our Salinas Valley cities. So we're recommending that $218,500 in Measure X funds be allocated to the North Monterey County Unified School District to implement projects on school property. And some of that was because there really is limited active transportation improvements that can be done around some of these schools, especially Echo Valley and Elkhorn, where there's not sidewalks in place now. It's difficult to make safety improvements that fell within our budget around the schools, but there were things that could be done on campus. And the remainder of the funds, $781,500, we're recommending to be funded through RSTP reserve funds to the County of Monterey for projects on county roadways. Next slide. So here is the project approvals process. We did a presentation to the North Monterey County School District Board on August 14th and asked for their approval of the projects on school district property. We got unanimous approval there. And we will be going to the Board of Supervisors on October 14th. So you'll be hearing a very similar presentation and asking for your approval of the projects on county roadways. And then we will be coming back to this board at your October meeting with the funding agreements for both the county and the school district and asking for your approval. So this is an informational item only. No decisions need to be made, but I welcome any questions or feedback that you have.
Awesome. What a fun project to work on. Sounds like it was well received by the community, and thank you always for being so doing these projects that are fun, but also make communities safer for our families. And when we know that they're safer for the kids, they're safer for our elders, they're safer for our moms with strollers, like it's better for everybody. So exciting to hear the updates. Let's bring it to the board for comments, and we'll start with District 2.
As I've expressed to you and elsewhere around wherever I can, I think this participatory budgeting process is extraordinary. It's a great way to go out and engage the community. And in many ways, I think, we took that same approach with the 20 million that was allocated from the state for for Pajaro. There was community meetings, people put their input in. It's something it's not done enough. And I think, you've had success in other areas you've done it. You had success in North County, 1,000 people participating. It lets people feel that they're involved in their own government. So overall, great. I hope we can find other ways to expand on that. I hope everybody going back to their jurisdiction can find ways to expand upon that, because it is a big success. I think the big challenge that you saw here, and I know this was where we had discussion early on, is down, and I'll make reference to South County because you made that reference where you came from before. You had 4 cities down there. And in the cities, $1 million goes a lot further than it does in a rural area. You can place it down crosswalks here on a street, as you pointed out with Echo Valley and Elkhorn. These are bigger systemic problems. I've had a lot of discussions with Public Works and the school district on how to address that. $1 million doesn't even touch anything. So I think it's just the thing to learn from this and from previous work is that as you go out into areas, we may want to have smaller geographical areas and rural areas to spend $1 million, or else try to find more than $1 million to spend on an area this size. There's 55,000 people here. $1 million was good to get out, did some things, but it might have been better to have it more concise to have a bigger impact in some areas.
Thank you. Great. Any other comments? Oh, I have a comment. Velasquez.
Oh, this is not. Yeah, thank you. I think the program and the presentation is great. I'm glad that there was so much community participation in the process. I just have a question because I'm a little confused now in terms of, I know we had the same process with the safe routes to school, but what was developed or what the community chose wasn't permanent. So we obviously received the funds. There was, a location that was identified, but I guess this is more robust and I'm trying to figure out why. We didn't work with the school district. There was, after the project, the pilot project was constructed and there was no, there was not, it was not permanent. So I guess I'm trying to figure out, is this a different process? And wanting to make sure that if we're utilizing the funds that obviously the striping is going to be permanent because, that's permanent, but any of the other components to this, are those going to be permanent? And is the county going to be responsible for continuing to make sure that the maintenance or whatever is required continues in these communities? Because I'm just a little, sorry, but I'm a little confused because it didn't happen like that in our community and I'm trying to figure out what's the difference.
There are many components to these projects. So for both Soledad and North County, we did a pilot project, which was a temporary project, really just meant to test something out, get feedback from the community. There wasn't a plan to make it permanent necessarily at the end of the project. And for both North County and Soledad, we did a separate process through the steering committee. So separate process for participatory budgeting where the community could vote on their highest priority projects. So I know that there has not been a plan following the Soledad pilot to make it permanent, but there was $250,000 in funding allocated for the projects that were chosen through Soledad's participatory budgeting process. And those would be implemented through the city. I can't speak off the top of my head to exactly what that project list was, but they were two separate projects, two separate components of the project, the pilot and then the participatory budgeting process.
We can connect afterwards. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Any other questions on this side? Over here, questions? Okay. Let's take it open to public comment. Any public comment on this item? I'm not seeing anyone in, yep. We do, in chambers.
I hope you're not surprised. Good morning. My name is Eric Peterson. And just one comment, I think this is really neat. Don't mean to criticize it at all. But one problem rural counties like Monterey County have with any bicyclists, not just kids, but adults, is there are no shoulders. And that's where bicyclists typically ride. Some years ago, Santa Clara County took a bunch of money and put shoulders on a lot of their rural roads. And the difference is night and day, not just for bicyclists, but for broken down cars, things like that. And if there's any way that could be done. A few years ago, you may have heard about the 3-foot law. Well, it's gone. The way the vehicle code is worded, I was just trying to look up the section and I couldn't find it quickly. But the vehicle code now says that you won't pass a bicyclist unless you can get completely out of the lane. And that's not going to get enforced, and that's going to be difficult to do. But bicycle safety is a challenge, and projects like this are very much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you for your public comment and for joining us at our meeting today. Is there any other public comment online? I'm not seeing any hands raised. Nope, we're not seeing any hands raised. All right, we're going to close public comment and bring this back to the board. And again, I think we'll thank our voters for Measure X and everyone who worked so hard to pass that, which is what part of what makes these projects possible, the support of voters approving investment in our local infrastructure. So thank you. With that, I think we're just receiving an update today, but this will be coming back to us for approval. With no other questions or comments, we will receive the report with appreciation. And thank you to both Amelia and to all of the participants who worked hard to the 999 folks who voted, as well as to the steering committee. Please do express our appreciation on behalf of the board for their work. Thank you. And with that, we will move on to our reports from the transportation providers who are with us today. Does Caltrans have any additional reports?
Yes, I do.
Fantastic. We'd love to
So-
hear them.
Good morning, Chair Askew and members of the board. Scott Eads, Caltrans District 5 Director. Glad to be here with you today. I have 3 items. The first is an update on the State Route 68 automated traffic signal control. No, that's a popular item here. We heard about that earlier during public comment. So just an update on that. To streamline delivery, TAMC is procuring the hardware. And so we'll be coordinating with them. As soon as the hardware arrives, we'll be working to install that with Caltrans forces. We also have a co-op agreement that's circulating in the background, but that's not going to affect the timing for us to be able to install. We expect the materials to be here. I think our estimate is by the end of October, and we'll be coordinating to do a handoff of the materials. And our goal is still to have the system installed and operational by the end of this year. Next item is Sustainable Transportation Planning Grant Call for Application. So the item that we just heard was funded at least partially through a Caltrans Sustainable Transportation Planning Grant. So a terrific example of how these funds, this funding source can be put to use. So the funding source is really for planning focused efforts, and it can be applied for by local jurisdictions, entities like TAMC and others. And there's 2 different categories under the Sustainable Transportation Planning Program. First is a Sustainable Communities Grant. There's around $30 million available. Some of that's in competitive, some of it's formula. And then there's a Strategic Partnership Grants, which is around $4.5 million that's available this year. Applications are due on November 21st. And there's some grant workshops coming up, including a virtual workshop that District 5 is putting on in October, actually on October 1st at 11 a.m. And then headquarters is also hosting one on October 8th. And Caltrans District 5 staff are happy to meet with local jurisdiction staff or others to provide assistance as you look through the application and want to strategize at all about how to apply. And then there's also a website. You can just Google Caltrans Sustainable Transportation Planning Grants. You should be able to find the website there, and there's a lot of information online. And then the last thing I wanted to mention is a happy news on the Caltrans side that we announced that Highway 1, we have an opening date for Highway 1 for through traffic through the Big Sur Coast. So our estimate right now is that we will have Highway 1 open fully for through traffic by the end of March 2026. Of course, that is a projected date. It's estimate right now, our best estimate at the time. There is some caveats, of course. We don't know exactly what the weather's going to be like. There's some challenging material below the area where we're working now, and we'll have better information in the coming weeks as we encounter and work through that material. And then, of course, we don't know exactly the condition of Highway 1 when we get there, when we remove the material, but our estimate takes all those factors into account. And that said, we're not just focused on that date, really. We're focused on working every single day that we can, every single moment that we can. We're working 7 days a week out there, and our goal is to get it open as quickly as we can. And then we'll continue to provide updates as we move through the material and have better information. And there's information online as well, but reach out to us if you have any questions.
Great. So just say that one more time, Scott, because I don't think everyone heard what you just said.
Late March 2026, opening for Highway 1.
Highway 1
All recent slide is the
opening,
driver.
estimated date, Highway 1, after how many years?
It's been a few.
It's been a few.
And of course, it's not just this slide. There was a whole slide
Multiple
before,
slides.
which ended up in a closed condition over an extended period.
Yeah, well.
We know
I
the
think-
impact, and we certainly appreciate what the pain that the business owners are going through, and we're doing everything we can to get it open.
Awesome. Well, thank you. And just a shout out to the Caltrans team. Like that's really exceptional feats of engineering that you guys have been able to pull together. We appreciate that update, and that's a big one. So we've been waiting a long time to hear that. So thank you. Okay, we'll go over to let's see here to I lost my screen up here to the airport. Do we have anyone from the airport? So Carl Miller from the airport? Any updates?
I am still here. Can you hear me?
We can, yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Nothing really earth-shattering to announce, just that we're still continuing with our project. We have no problems. Completion date with the new terminal is in approximately 18 months. As part of that project, we will be putting a roundabout in on Olmsted and Garden Road. And on the 29th, we interview candidates to replace our executive director, Michael Lapierre. So hopefully next meeting, I'll be able to announce who our new ED is. That's all I have.
All right. Thank you. Thanks for joining us today. MST.
Thank you. It was a pleasure last week to be in Boston with Sand City Mayor and MST Board Chair Mary Ann Carbone and TAMC representative from Monterey, Ed Smith, also on our board, along with our city council member and board member from Salinas, Tony Barrera, and some staff and representatives of our union to receive the American Public Transportation Association's Best Public Transit Operator Award in the nation. So that was great for us to receive that award for an agency of our size. So that was wonderful and a great testament to the team at MST and our hardworking employees and recovering 108% of pre-COVID ridership. We're over pre-COVID ridership in the city of Salinas now and working to reach those goals for countywide in the coming years. Also, in the good news department, a short 1 year and 10 days, but who's counting, after the Coastal Commission approved a coastal development permit for our surf project. We received notice on Monday that we have cleared all pre-construction conditions for the project in the coastal zone. There were some, 19 or 20 different submittals that we had to work through and get that through the process. And thanks to our partners at TAMC, Caltrans, City of Sand City, City of Marina, and many, many others, we have that approval. And Monday, September 29th, we'll be removing rail and really doing, so you'll see the heavy construction starting. So thank you.
Thank you. Well, MST did pave a little tiny section of sidewalk that I've been complaining about not having been paved for decades. And so my family has been celebrating that on a daily basis for the past 2 weeks. So anyway, thank you, MST, for paving that. It was probably 20 feet of sidewalk that now connects us to our friend's house. So thank you. And the MBARD, do we have someone from MBARD with us?
Yeah, hello, good morning.
Yes.
Dave Frisbee with
Dave Frisbee,
Monterey Bay Area
thank you.
Resources
Yes.
District. Yeah. All right. We have a few things going on. We've got electric vehicle incentive program up and running. It provides $1,500 towards the purchase of an electric vehicle, and it's a very good time to buy an electric vehicle because the federal tax credit will be going away by the end of the month. So if you don't have one, go out and get an electric vehicle, and you can get substantial incentives. Our zero emission school bus program in Monterey County, we have 2 school districts under contract to deliver all electric school buses. One is Salinas Elementary, and the other is the North Monterey County Unified School District. And our motor vehicle emission reduction grant program, which is funded through DMV fees. We get $4 off of every registered vehicle in the region. We use some of those funds towards a grant program to reduce emissions from motor vehicles. We've reviewed applications and it's going to our board in October. Some of the applications we've received are actually this year we've received a lot of applications. Most of our applications are for electric vehicle infrastructure. So we'll hopefully be building some electric vehicle charge stations in the region here very soon. We've got an application for all electric street sweeper, transit bus with MST, and roundabouts and multi-use paths. So that will be headed to our board this month, next month. Okay, and that's it. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. With those updates, and thank you all for joining us, we will ask for any reports on meetings attended by board members at transportation agency expense as required by state law.
None this month.
None this month, and we'll ask for an executive director's report.
I think my list is down to one item. If Ryan could stand up and wave, I'd like. Hello, he's our new contract and grant coordinator in the States. It's a new position at TAMC. I don't know who's most excited in the office. We're all really excited about Ryan on board, helping out, keeping all of our grant contracts. So then we'll.
Welcome. We're thrilled to have you with us. Welcome to the team. And with that, are there any announcements or comments from TAMC members on matters that you wish to put on future transportation agency agendas? Velasquez.
Yes, I just want to make sure that I noted on this section as I did on the, at the beginning on the minutes, but I do want to bring back the policy that we have for the TAMC 2023 guidelines and policies for the RSTP programs to come back for review and looking at those equity kind of other discussion issues that I mentioned at the beginning.
As I mentioned earlier, that's scheduled for March.
Okay, so we do have that. Thank you for noting that. And we have that on for March. And then we also have a workshop on our gas tax transition would be another one. Great. Anyone else? Anything else? All right, with that, we are adjourned. Thank you all. And we'll see you at our next meeting, which is October 22nd at 9 a.m. Thank you.
And I'll see if